Welcome everyone to the late game, episode 35. My name is Lycan. With me I have co-host In Control and Destiny, and our first guest of the evening. It's Fear Dragon. Fear Dragon, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing swell. Thank you for asking. Jeff, how you been?
Getting over a cold, but I am pretty much over it, so today is basically the best day ever.
Good, good. I love that feeling after a cold where you appreciate actually what it feels like to not have one. And then
That is right.
Then the day you get a cold, it's
I feel like being sick is like the best example of like. Oh shit! I think my Skype was lagging a little bit. Sorry. I feel like being sick is like an interesting like view of like how people acclimate to things. Because when you're sick, like the only thing you can think about is like, oh my god, if my throat wasn't sore, if my nose wasn't runny, like I would be so happy. And then like for a day or two afterwards, you are, and then after that, you don't care about it anymore.
Yep.
It's very true. It's the same thing as when a police officer gives you a warning for speeding as opposed to an actual ticket.
Yeah, sure.
The whole time you're like, well, I'm fucked. Oh god, it's gonna cost so much money. And he comes over and goes, I'm gonna let you off with a warning. You're just like, like full body orgasms. Amazing.
Yeah. I think you can say similar things about money too. I always thought that was interesting. That's like the comparison that I use when you talk about going from having no money to having like a lot of money. People are like, oh my god, like how are you not like crazy like every single day of your life? Like you should be so happy that like people are rich or whatever, right? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
people acclimate to things really fast. It's kind of like being sick and getting over it, and you don't think about it anymore, you know?
Yep.
Exactly right.
Steven, your Skype blows right now. You're frozen.
I think that guy you dissed on Passion Stone is coming after you, bro.
Yeah, you just got DDoS for saying that card games aren't a money sink.
Okay. Is my Skype really laggy?
Well, you're like frozen, and then you sound like a robot.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like a new feature. Voice
Yeah, it could be a new feature
I
actually.
mean, knowing
Right.
Skype, yeah.
I'm gonna hang up on you and call you back, okay?
Fuck you, mate.
Oh, let me get rid of your screen. Oh, or he'll do that. So anyway, we got a lot to talk about today, guys. We were going to do that replay analysis with QXC. QXC is still going to come on. We're going to discuss the Liberator and the Adept, but we won't be doing it with replay because the replay that Dragon's admin sent me is actually a TVZ. I'm sure Liberators are probably used in that, but one of the focuses I wanted to go for was just those two units playing off each other, Adepts, Liberators, and then just how they play up in the TVP matchup. But maybe we'll go into that. We'll see how we're feeling. But we will bring QXC in to talk about Liberator, and then we have Jeff, who plays the beta religiously, to talk about the Adept from his point of view in the Liberator. So I'm sure you've seen it on ladder. We're also going to talk about WCS Premiere. The last match is going on right now. It's Xanster versus Firecake going on. Xanster was last up 2-0 before we kicked off the show. And we'll talk about upsets. Did it just end?
That's my dog this time, guys. We can't do the show without a dog.
Yeah.
Ferguson, shut your face. He'll be
There's
fine.
your mom joke somewhere in there, but I'm too high class now to make it because I'm a Hearthstone streamer and we adhere to a higher set of morals.
So Destiny is here despite the swirling icon in his face position. We do have him. What else is going on?
I can just picture Destiny. You know what I mean? I don't need to actually see him.
He's always here in our hearts.
He's a handsome motherfucker.
Thanks. I shaved yesterday and everything, trimmed up just for you guys.
I love you, man. Thank you. All right, and then we'll be talking about the Blizzard Summit. You've heard some things around, but I definitely wanted to get it on the show to talk about it. We have an outsider, Steven here. I want to know what his perception has been with all the feedback from Blizzard, with the feedback from the community as well. And we all are going to talk about TOA, tournament organizers. They're teaming up to, kind of incentivize players to show up for events, tournament organizer goes out of their way to schedule a show match, or you sign up for an event, you qualify, and then you screw the bracket up. So it's kind of their way. But we'll discuss that more in detail as we get into it. But first, let's kick it off with WCS Premiere. So the last game to finish, 3-0 Xanster over Firecake. Jeff, do you see any shock there? Did you expect it to be a shutout like that?
I mean, it is ZVZ, but it's not like that's like a super coin flipping matchup. I think they're fairly evenly matched. I got to watch a lot of Xanster at Home Story Cup, and he really impressed me. Like he's for a guy that doesn't follow the European scene too terribly closely, but certainly closer than Rotterdam does. I can say that like he was not a guy I was considering as one of the absolute top dog European players, whereas Firecake I think you would, and I think deservedly so. Like, say what you want about the guy. Everyone knows he's a gigantic jerk, but he's very, very good. 3-0, that's very impressive, especially in a super important match right now. So Xanster's on the rise. He's one of the up-and-comers. I don't have any like detail. I didn't actually watch the series, but like I said, at Home Story Cup he played really well, so it's cool.
Yeah, Fear Dragon. All right, we're not going to go through every single matchup, but just from the last couple days of WCS, anything in particular stick out to you? Any particular upset?
I think there was one that I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember what it was for WCS America.
Stardust?
I think it was... Yeah, Neve versus Stardust. So, like, Stardust is in a really weird spot. Like, I've been seeing him in a lot more random American qualifiers or, like, weekly tournaments and stuff. And he's in this, like, really weird place where some games he'll look like, okay, yeah, it's Korean versus, you know, random foreigner number B or 23. And then other games, like, he'll just lose in really, really silly ways. I don't really know what to make of it. It's like, I think Stardust is not exactly the skill level he used to be. Like, I know he dropped a series to no regret, like, some, like, IEM qualifier or something, like, a week or two ago. Lost to Neeb 3-2, and Neeb like played really well and everything, but that was kind of a standout one. This is personal bias, but I'm a huge Jon Snow fan, and I was really impressed with how he played Game 1 and Game 2 versus Polt, but he still got 3-0'd, so it's like, I guess in the end it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
In the end, it doesn't even matter, and you quoted Linkin Park. Good job.
I mean, I listen to it on a daily basis. Like,
You should.
I think most people do.
Soundtrack of our lives. Jeff, any
I mean,
big...
that makes sense because in that part of the world, like, don't you guys get all that music like 20 or 30 years later anyway?
Whoa.
Okay, I'm done.
He doesn't live in India, Destiny.
Why does...
Whoa, hey, you know what?
He thought you did.
Wait a second. Hold on, did you think I lived in India or did you think I lived in Canada? Because for some reason, like, 25 people have asked me in the past 3 months if I lived in Canada.
No, I just assumed you live in the United States.
Okay.
Right?
Nice save. He thought India.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong. I've watched a lot of The Big Bang Theory, but he does not sound like the Indian dude
He thought you were
on that show. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's not, like, living in India now. I could be wrong, but... I'm sorry, it was a joke about the fact that a lot of countries around the world get our music, like, 20 or 30 years later. So, like, that's...
You're right, though. You're right. Whenever I go to India, I go into, like, a mall, and I'm like,
And you hear pop songs from, like, 20 years ago,
I'm
right?
in, like, 1997 right now, and it's 2015. It's a really, really surreal experience.
Okay.
So you're not totally wrong there.
That was beautiful. That was awesome. Jeff, from all the WCS the past couple days, anything in particular stick out to you? Any major upset that you were, you know, kind of blown away with?
Yeah, I was just looking at that actually. I think Kane beating Huck is an interesting matchup in the sense that like both these guys obviously aren't the full-time pro gamer that they were, right? Like Huck has very clearly been traveling, doing a lot of casting actually, not just one or two events, but like kind of all of them lately, which is really cool for him. But it's kind of funny for me to see this because this is that transitional period that I fucking went through where it's like, yeah, if you're traveling that much and it's not even just that you're not playing the game at home literally because you're at the event. It's because all travel is like a day in front and a day after, and then the event itself. And in all those days, you're not practicing at all. And then when you get home, you're fucking tired as well. So it kind of cuts into your ability to practice there. And it's just this really detrimental thing. And we're kind of seeing that happen with Huck. Like he qualified for Premiere, you know, but then he's immediately out, or Challenger rather. But then he's immediately knocked out, you know. And he's still a really good player, but he has these moments. And Kane's, you know, kind of on the Kane says he's not practicing. He's only playing in WCS. I believe him, I think, for the most part. But I think any StarCraft pro on any level does not... very few of them cold turkey, just like, not playing at all. And then like, I'll show up for WCS and 3-2 Huck. I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's playing a little bit. But that's not to take away from his accomplishment. It's I think they're both kind of in this weird transitional period. So it's interesting.
I think to build on what In Control was saying, like I agree. I've talked to some players, and like I was mentioning, like, oh man, like what do you think about the Kane like versus Huck thing? And some of them were saying like, yeah, if you actually look at like some of the accounts that Kane's been playing on, he's actually been playing like hundreds of games this season. Like he hasn't been cutting it cold turkey. And also like, I don't know like how much of this is Kane's sort of like impression that he just tries to leave on everyone that he's not practicing very much, but he's always in the past also said that
Yeah,
he doesn't practice a lot. So like if there's someone you expect to do well on lower or minimal amounts of practice, it's probably Kane.
There's a few people like that. I think another big result too is Massa 3-0ing Bales. Bales has been kind of, I wouldn't say red hot, but like for the NA scene, kind of red hot in the sense that he's been doing very well, accomplishing for, you know, WCS and stuff like that. And Massa is one of those players too that is very good, but kind of ironic to the comment I just made, is one of those guys that like plays on Smurfs, but is not a like 5,000 games a season kind of guy, like full-time pro gamer. He's kind of like a weird, from what I know, by the way, I could be completely wrong, but he's like a kind of an interesting, just a good, talented, plays however much he feels, and then just wins against these really good players every once in a while. So for the NA scene, WCS, that kind of leaps out at me. And then for Europe, it was pretty much business as usual. Like I actually predicted Showtime to beat Naniway. We have to remember that Showtime was the one that knocked Naniway out the time before as well. Starbuck beating Bunny was a kind of big deal. Euthermal beating Elfie. That's like that. Elfie's the bigger name player, but Euthermal's the one that's been kind of getting more results lately. Elfie's a little bit on his way out, and I think probably the biggest upset was the Laser 3-0ing Wellmu. That's very surprising.
What about Xenocider going down to Hitman?
That was like, a beautiful series.
It was a good series, but like to be honest, you know, Xenocider just got done with high school, and like, well, yeah, he's going off to college pretty soon here, but it's like, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but from what I gather as well, he's also one of those guys that's not necessarily cramming in the practice and traveling the world and doing like full time. He is pretty focused on making sure that he's got his real life in order, and and then he's playing StarCraft on the side. So for a student guy to make it 3-2, okay. And I have nobody knows Hitman's story. Nobody fucking knows that guy. So maybe he's like, well, I actually only have one hand, and I play suspended from the ceiling upside down. And it's like, wow, that's really impressive. But otherwise, I have no idea. But on the Xenocider side of things, I wish I could tell you Xenocider is going hard on StarCraft, but I don't get that sense.
Okay. I'm excited for the series in general. I mean, we get to see who Hitman is, assuming he doesn't just say, nah, I want to remain anonymous. I'll take the premiere
Has
money.
he never been seen?
No. There's no picture on his list.
Even during like Shoutcraft, I remember Shoutcraft America when Hitman was in there. Total Biscuit had images for everyone, and literally for Hitman, he just took the actual like the game cover of Hitman because he refuse to provide any sort of image.
Cool. That'll be fun. I wonder why the intrigue.
Yeah.
He's gonna be like a 75-year-old man. It'll be awesome.
So Hitman, I mean, he made it through. And the best part about it.
Actually, I have a question then, and like it just occurred to me, like we don't know anything about Hitman. Does anyone know? Like, has anyone verified that he's even of legal age to play in WCS?
Yeah,
I know that's why they kept Arium out.
You have to provide the stuff before they'll let you compete once you qualify. So, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, they know for sure who he is, and they've probably seen a picture of him. So WCS holds the secret. They didn't show me or Nathanius it while we were there. Everyone was still kind of unsure of who Hitman is. But that's what's going to be awesome about WCS Premiere is that we're going to find out who he is. We're going to see the face. And a lot of people, Steven, you know, when you played StarCraft, and Jeff, I'm sure you have, both of you have probably ran into Hitman at some point, right?
Oh, yeah, I played him a bunch of times. But I try not to, yeah, exactly. Like, Steve will have a better opinion of him.
Too. Like, I fucking hate him. Fuck that guy.
That's what I hear from everybody. My experience, they're like, oh, he's such a cheeser. But in PvP, like, everyone's such a cheeser anyways. So
right.
I have a normal relationship with the guy.
Yeah, I
look up to him as a father and a god.
But if he makes it anywhere in WCS, like, expect to see the amount of, like, bitching about Protos go up, like, 4 million fold on, like, subreddits. Like, he's literally the only reason anybody knows who Hitman is because he cheats the fuck out of Scarlet in this series. It's the only recognition he's ever gotten, and he's really good at cheating. That's all he can do.
No.
If you can survive the early game with him, even if you have to gimp yourself, if you survive the early game with him, the late game, like, I've played mid to late games against him that made me think that I got queued against, like, a Diamond or Mid-Masters.
Nope, you should have seen the game.
An A player, and they just like had Hitman's name. Like
you missed the game, Steven. Like Hitman went macro most of the games he won for this that best of 5.
Oh, maybe he's gotten better at it then, because his macro.
That series made no sense though. It was like Xenocider won the game where he decided to cheese, and Hitman was winning the macro games. Like it was The exact opposite what I think 99.9% of people were thinking.
Everyone expected all in, all in, all in, all in, and even when Hitman was getting all in, he never tried to go for Starport, never tried to go for Dark Templar, never tried to just go for a one-base blink. He kept trying to get that Nexus down and to move on from there. So I feel like he had plans, and everyone expected cheese, so that probably was part of his strategy. Trip them up, go for something that they wouldn't expect, take it to the mid to the late game where they're not prepared for you, and that seems to be what it worked. So
what it worked.
Be what it worked. Yeah, that. Damn it. So we're going into WCS Premiere. The 32 people are there. They've qualified. They're in the league, and it's going to be kicking off. I don't know the date, but soon. We do have the dates. They were printed actually
August 13th, I think.
There we go.
For what? Oh yeah.
WCS Premiere. Yeah. I can just click on that link and maybe
Well,
there's a
the
date.
Poland one's in September, but yeah.
Yeah. So the finals round of 16 that'll be in Poland, and yeah, you're right, Ravi. August 13th, Group A kicks off. That'll be in North America, according to the flag. And it's going to be exciting. There are a lot of people that I'm looking forward to see playing. Moving on to the next topic, let's talk about the TOA. Ravi, what is the full name?
The Organizers Alliance Against Absent Athletes. I think that was a joke name that I came up with, and I just wanted to call it the Organizers Alliance, but I forgot to remove it from the Google Doc before I did, so...
Well,
it's now officially a part of the name.
I wanted the League of Extraordinary Tournament Organizers, or something like that. But,
yeah, I thought that was a little bit too narcissistic.
Obviously, it was not meant to be serious. But, Steven, did you get a chance to see that document, or do you know what we're talking about yet?
I briefly saw that, and I saw Kane's response, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on with it.
All right, Ravi, give us the TLDR of what the alliance is.
All right, so basically it's a rule set that a bunch of organizers, for online tournaments, came up with to try and reduce the number of no-shows. So effectively, it's a temporary blacklist that players will get put on if they no-show for non-open bracket events. If you no-show for your your open bracket event, nobody cares. Whatever, you'll just be removed from the bracket. But if you have a show match or you have a league format or something that you're supposed to be playing in, and you don't show up without at least giving some sort of notification, I think it's 36 hours in advance, then you basically accumulate a strike. And it's a 3-strike system. After 3 strikes, you'll be put in what we're calling foreigner jail, name pending if we decide to change it. But idea is then you are not allowed to play in any of the events that any of the organizers inside the organization are playing in. So I think that's one thing that for some reason people think it's literally everything. DreamHack, MSI, nobody else those people are not involved in this. This is Base Trade TV, Lycan League, Alima League, my stuff, ASL, that kind of stuff. So it's just the organizers that are a part of this organization that's being enforced by.
Okay, so and what we decided on was 3 strikes, 9 months, right? After 9 months from the date you get a strike, that strike falls off, right?
Yeah, so that was a change. Initially, we launched it with a strike would last for 3 months because we were afraid about being too strict. But then we launched, and when we announced everything, everyone was just saying this is way too lenient. And even players were saying the way that I look at this is I'm allowed to skip an event once a month, which is the exact opposite. Is not exactly a good mentality that we want to be telling players to do. We don't want them to be thinking that way. So we said, okay, we'll increase the amount of time a strike will last to 9 months. And the idea is when strikes will eventually fall off, and if you get out of the foreigner jail after say 2 months and you still have 3 strikes, you're not banned from or prohibited from playing at events. It's just that if you get another strike and you already have 3 strikes, you're going to be immediately put back into the temp ban list. It's a probation period effectively.
Yeah, and then the last thing is that when Ravi came to me with the idea, the thing that I worried about was you get those problem children, right? A lot of these people run tournaments regularly. So there are the people that always, there's the finals they've signed up for and then they don't show for the bracket or things like that. there are times that people deal with someone and they have a notion about them. Let's say, just for example, a Villo. He has a reputation that comes with him. There's the chance that an organizer could give him unfair treatment where in another situation he would be courteous. Also, you have to take into account that tournaments fuck up, right? The organizers fuck up sometimes, and you don't want to have a player paying for what someone else did wrong. So we created a council, and basically what the council is, everyone's allowed to issue one strike, period, end of story, right? So someone screws up in your tournament, it's their first strike, you can give it to them, the end. That's like your one freebie to give. But after that, if you want to issue a strike to someone that already has one, the council has to see it. And the council will see, what goes on, and if they think that, okay, well, we want more information, they'll go to the player, they'll say, hey, tell us what happened, and they get both sides of the story. And this just prevents any kind of unfair, picking on someone so that eventually they get banned for a long period of time. We don't want that. That's not the point of this. This is just to discourage people. But Steven, I'm actually very interested, as someone who's ran a tournament before and all that, and just watched the way the foreign scene operates. What are your thoughts on this initiative?
Honestly, I think it's way too weak. I think you should be way more fucking harsh. And I think you should go retroactive with it too. There are some repeat offenders that have just like fucked over. Major is like the first one that comes to mind. Like I almost think that like everything that he's done like has already amounted to what should almost be a perm ban from like all like local or like all like NA related kind of events or whatever. I don't know, that skipping out of tournaments or whatever is like really fucking aggravating, especially when people are putting on tournaments that are like region locked and shit. Like to skip out of shit like that and to fuck people. The Muslim has done it quite a bit too. I don't know as much about all of his stories, but yeah, I mean, I think I agree with the idea behind it. I think people should be punished for just totally like blowing shit off. I don't think that's cool.
So I think the thing about like trying to retroactively put it, like besides the whole concern about like, hey, a bunch of players crying like we didn't know kind of things, which is like maybe justifiable, maybe not, because I mean, really, like you shouldn't be intentionally like it's the thing you shouldn't be doing anyways. But like I think it introduces like a bit of ambiguity, unless like you're legitimately looking and saying, oh, well, these people no-showed for like these events over the past 9 months. Like I guess we'll give them all strikes now and like temp ban them right now. Like I think it becomes like a little bit weird in dealing with that.
Jeff, what are your thoughts?
For this kind of thing, like I think it's good that they're organized and it's just like a natural step forward, I suppose. But like it didn't like the concept itself doesn't super blow me away, and that's not a positive or a negative, honestly. Like I said, overall it's good that people are organizing and talking about, hey, if you disrespect our tournament and say you'll be somewhere and just aren't, it's good, yeah. Have more of a punishment, but this has been like a long time thing, and honestly I feel like it's more in the past it's been like self-governed and natural in the sense that like, hey, the Muslim or Major keeps not showing up, then you stop inviting him, and that should happen. And then if like smaller tournaments like Base Trade, or well, smaller than a DreamHack, I guess is what I'm saying, or Fear Dragon stuff, is stop going to those guys. If they say, hey, I'd like to play, be like, no man, you didn't show up the last 2 times I invited you, fuck off. Like you gotta so that's what has happened in the past. If you're organizing to try to give it a little bit more of a heavy hand and like all right, you signed up, now you have to be a semi-logical, sentient adult that says, hey, I can't show up if you don't show up, as opposed to just fucking blowing us off. Cool, yeah, I mean, but it doesn't, like, when I say it doesn't blow me away, it's like...
It's nothing new, really, exactly.
It's not.
Yeah, it's just like...
It's just organized, so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is that, as a tournament organizer, it allows us to enforce those kind of, like, more ambiguous things. Like, for a show match, yeah, if I run a show match, I'm almost never, ever, ever going to invite Major, because I can't expect him to actually show up. But if he, like, signs up in the open bracket for some sort of qualifier, like, this gives me that sort of potential to be like, actually, no, you're not allowed to sign up for the open bracket. It's like the difference between passively deciding not to invite those players versus being able to take an active stance against stopping them from being...
But like I said, there's nothing stopping you in the past whatsoever.
That's true.
If you said, hey, I saw you sign up for the open bracket, I actually don't want you in my tournament, he makes a thread on Reddit that says, hey, Fear Dragon's a fucking asshole, he called me a dick and he won't let me play in the tournament. You just simply respond to, yeah, the last 3 times I ran a tournament, you played 2 rounds, disappeared, sent my tournament into a 1-hour delay, and then just didn't show up, and I don't want that in there. No one's gonna be like, well, you don't have like an organization together, you don't have an official name with a graphic at the top of the header, so what right do you have
I don't know. People might.
You know what, Destiny?
Someone
Here's the thing.
will, but
Here's the thing. Someone will, because it's the internet, so you're right. But when that person does say it, nobody gives a fuck. Except the 3 other people on the internet. You're right. But what I'm trying to leverage here is I think the majority of people would understand your argument that it's your tournament. You either crowdfunded it or you're hosting with your own money, which you've done oftentimes in the past. And this guy's actually fucked you over. And you're not talking about a grand prize of $40,000. So, like, if you're like, hey, I don't want you to have a chance at winning my $100, I think most people are going to be pretty okay with the fact that you're upset. That, you know. So again, I'm not going to argue too much about this because at the end of the day, like I said, that was natural. This is organized, and organized in a perfect vacuum is the better version. So this is better. It's good. It's just when people are like, hey, what do you think about this? It's like, you know, it doesn't knock my socks off because it should have happened, and it does happen. And
Right.
It's now happening.
I get what you're saying. I think the one thing I would say just to that, if I were to look for the plus that comes from organizing, is just that it creates a little, so sort of some of the smaller tournaments, you know, like let's take the Lycan League, right? If someone were habitually screwing me over, there were like a couple people that just weren't coming to me or my show matches or something like that. To me, they could look at me and just say, oh, well, you know, you're small potatoes. I can do whatever I want. You need me more than I need you, that kind of thing. But then, you know, they're like, well, if I screw Lycan over 3 times, I don't get to participate in any of base trades qualifiers for the next 9 months, kind of thing.
It's the incentive. It's the heavy-handed thing. That's what I was saying.
All right. The one thing I do want to bring up next is there was the response, and I know that Kay made a joke response, but one thing I do want to say is I've been very adamant and open about wanting players to start unionizing for themselves, to protect themselves, because players get screwed over a lot, just like tournament organizers get screwed over. And I think it would be actually very smart if someone saw this and said, okay, you know what? Maybe this is the time that we move forward. And you get tournaments that are constantly like not paying people out in a reasonable amount of time. You get tournaments that are, you know, dicking over their players, treating them poorly, delaying things, last minute changes. I mean, we're talking without regard to, you know, logical, just this is the way things are kind of situations. You know, saying the same thing, like, hey, if a tournament organizer screws too many of us over, we blackball them for a certain amount. No one in our union will, you know, participate in their tournament, that kind of thing. Ravi, you know, we've been discussing this just with the feedback that's come from the post. Do you have any thoughts on, you know, the player rights, the player protections, things like that? Because remember, the council, that's for player protection, but obviously there are more things that can be done.
So I think the big thing that is going through my mind with that is I really want to start doing stuff like that. I want to actually make the, like, when I started this whole organization thing, I actually just wanted it to be a collaboration between organizers. I never thought of it as a union. I guess it makes sense that it is effectively a union, but I didn't really think of it like that. I really was just thinking like, okay, well, we have a bunch of organizers and we have a bunch of problems where, for example, like we'll constantly schedule events over each other because we don't communicate, and we plan our events and then we announce them. We're like, oh, well, fuck me. Like, I guess I scheduled it over this other person's. Like, now we're going to be competing for viewers. When if I had known about this like a week ago, I could have moved it 1 extra day. Like, so I actually was kind of organizing this together under that sort of thought process. And just like the idea that organizers can communicate with each other. And this was sort of like the one singular idea that I thought like, hey, you know, no shows are shitty. Let's take that issue and get it to bring a bunch of people together. So like I want to do a lot more with this. One of the things that I want to do is also like, and I know I've kind of brought this up with the organization, and I kind of agree with their consensus on it, that I want to do things like, hey, event organizers, like we want to create some sort of punishment also for the organizers in the organization who don't pay out players on time. Like that kind of thing would be awesome. I think that would be a really, really good thing to do. But I think right now the organization kind of like the consensus is let's do one thing right first before we start trying to save all of esports. Because like it's the idea of like overreaching right now. Let's like literally just get this one system in place and have it run for more than a day before we start creating like additional endeavors that we're trying to embark on.
Yep. All right, before we move on from this, I think that's a good summary. I think we answered a lot of, you know, just the, you know, misunderstandings. Steven, you want to give us any final thoughts on this?
He's like, hang on, let me pause my league game.
I'm not even playing League today. Fuck, my Skype proxy is being really shitty, so everything's laggy. No, I mean, it sounds good. I mean, there's not much more to input, right? Is it?
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah.
I'm not trying to skip out, but no, I mean, it sounds great. Something like this has probably been like a long time coming. There's been a lot of players, not a lot of players, but there's been a handful of players that have like been consistently shitty in regards to showing up for tournaments. And other organizers, Total Biscuit comes to mind, have complained about it in the past. So yeah.
And that was actually I think a big thing behind Ravi's initiative was Shoutcraft and the things that went down with that, right, Ravi?
Yeah, I mean that was like a final straw, basically. I had been thinking about this for a while, and I decided to take action after Shellcraft announced it was going to basically stop.
All right, cool. We're going to move on now to the Blizzard Summit. I don't know how much Jeff has talked about this. I haven't seen a vlog come out or anything, so I'm excited to hear a little more of his thoughts. You know, I was there with him. We got to see a lot of different things that we can't talk about. We got to see some things that we can talk about. And then, you know, with Steven and Ravi here, if you guys want to help just drive the discussion by asking questions about information you want to know that maybe we can or can't discuss, you know, we'll take it from there. But Jeff, what was your overall impression with the Blizzard Summit?
I think the long and short of it is I was just excited at the notion that Blizzard is reaching out, and one of the points that they talked about, which I believe I can say, is that they reached out at a time where it's not like a circle jerk of like, I mean, you know, hey, what's your ideas? And then, well, we're too far down development to actually implement anything or use it. It was more of a like, you know, pull for ideas, research, and I felt pretty cool about how they treated us very much so like people that could contribute, and they continuously said, and I felt like treated us that way as well, actions as well. So it was just nice to get in there and rub elbows with the people that are making this amazing game, and then get really excited about it. Obviously, I and nobody can talk about details. They're not building a nuclear bomb or something like that. Like it's not. I'm not about to sit here and be like, make sure your computer can run 3D graphic. You know, like we're not going crazy. But I love StarCraft, and there's definitely been some ups and downs for sure. And I feel like this is going to be one of the ups. Like I'm really positive and lit up on what they're talking about. And I actually think the single player looks really good. And I'm not a single player kind of guy, so I actually have to play through HOTS now because I completely skipped it so that I could not jump in randomly into the Legacy of the Void single player. But yeah, I can't go into too much detail as anyone cannot. But all I can say is I'm just very positive that it's awesome to see Blizzard listening to people, asking people actively, and then implementing on a lot of levels. And seeing the people behind this is really cool.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I know you can't talk about in detail, but we did get to see, and Blizzard has announced that this is something that's happening. So, what did you think of Allied Commanders?
Did they announce Allied Commander?
Yeah.
They say what it was?
No, they just said that it was a new co-op mode, but they didn't go into details. So just using non-descriptive words about what you actually did.
I like actually just the spirit behind those kind of things. Like I'm actually super stoked on Archon mode, and when I say that, I don't mean like I can't wait for me to dive in there. Like there's going to be times where I play it with people, and you know it's cool for streaming because you can like bring in people that sub or donate or whatever. Like there's just little things like that, but the overall philosophy behind this that I appreciate is they're like, okay, StarCraft's really fucking hard. Legacy of the Void's probably going to get more technical. We need to actually put in some serious work into making this game attractive for people that don't necessarily want to hear StarCraft is getting harder. So Archon mode, shared responsibility, multiplayer, it's going to be really fun in my opinion, but also potentially very challenging with what, you know, Red Bull's doing with it. Allied Commander, not getting into too much detail, but that's obviously also some form of co-op, shared responsibility, like social event. And I feel like with them cleaning up the UI and BattleNet, like all these things are kind of lending themselves towards something Steven was super high up on a while ago, but just making the game quite a bit better for people of all different shapes and sizes and skill, essentially. And I think the overall package of Legacy of the Void is going to be attractive to more people. Now, am I saying this and I'm like, guys, prepare yourselves, League of Legends, Dota, here comes StarCraft? No, because it's RTS, and it's not going to be that style of a game. And that was actually one of the things that was discussed, by the way, at the summit. They were like, guys, we're not trying to be the biggest game. We're not a quantity type of company. We're a quality. They have their quantity, obviously, or they had it with WoW. StarCraft is never going to be the 75 million person game. It's going to be they want it to be the best game you can buy. And fuck, man, I was drinking that Kool-Aid. I'm excited.
Yeah, oh man, it was a good time, and there were a lot of awesome things. Steven, you have any thoughts or questions just about the summit or anything like that?
Real fast, is my mic sound better now?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. I think the video won't work until you restart. I'm not sure. I've tried restarting and starting mine, but it's not. But regardless. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it should be interesting. I know I don't know. I think they're having a few more of these summit things, right?
They said they want to do more, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they definitely are. And yeah, that'll be. I don't know. It seems fun. It's hard to say because I don't know what you guys are NDA'd behind, or like what's allowed to be discussed, or like what questions I can even ask. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like as much.
So
hold
I have
on,
a question.
real quick.
Okay.
Say that question. I'm gonna just go ahead and restart the call. Give us 1 second, guys. Production quality. Uno, dos, tres.
Do you see me? My beautiful smiling face?
I don't see your beautiful smiley
Oh.
face, unfortunately.
Oh, weird.
It never left my mind's eye.
I guess we'll just never get to see it. It's all right.
Oh, do you see everybody but me, though?
Yep.
Yep.
Fuck you, wow. I see you guys, if that matters.
I mean, that makes me happy, but...
Alright, what was Ravi's
All right,
question?
yeah, go ahead, Ravi.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, so I know that there's been a heavy emphasis on, we got to see all these, like, cool things that they're planning for the future. Would you say that it was, like, mostly just new features, like, software features that their, like, Blizzard team has been working on or is going to be working on? Or did they show you, like, a lot of the plans, for example, of future WCS, like, things that aren't something that someone has to code up and, like, deploy?
No, it was
Battle.net?
everything. We met with esports. We talked to them about current WCS format and what we could, we brainstormed ideas for the future and present. And when we talked to like every member of the StarCraft 2 team, and it's not just like a coding thing. It was like we saw how, I don't know. It was just really, it was comprehensive is the word I would say. Like we saw every aspect of StarCraft 2.
Yeah, we met every team. We discussed every aspect. I mean, if you can think about it right off the top of your head, we've probably discussed it, kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, and like I guess then in that case, like, did you guys have any thoughts that you can talk about like what you thought about their direction with say like WCS or I guess any of those systems?
Not specifics. We can just.
I could say
Yeah.
Not specifics like that, but I will say this: is that long term is their direction, right? They're not just thinking it's done right after Legacy of the Void launches. They're not dropping the ball. Like I said before, that team is fucking huge, right? Let's take aside from just the giant chunk, including the giant chunk that just is dedicated StarCraft development. They have almost 200 people that work on StarCraft on a regular basis. Now, some of those people are shared from other teams, but the StarCraft core team, being as big as it is staying 100% in StarCraft, not going to Heroes, not going to Hearthstone, StarCraft. And that is, yeah.
I know how snooty it is when it sounds like everyone's like, oh, I can't discuss, I'm NDA'd, but to be honest, like Blizzard is really renowned for their secrecy, so it was actually a really kind of monumental moment when they allowed us to even go in there and do this thing. And then also we signed an NDA where they could sue us for hundreds of millions of dollars. So when people are like, tell us more specifics, it's like, to be honest, like you're going to get a disappointing answer because everything that's been out publicly where they're like, Allied commanders at such and such event, and and we're able to say like we're really excited and the future's looking good, and like Lycan says it's long term and stuff like that. That's what we can say. We can't. There's no question you can ask where I then give you specifics that doesn't result in me disappearing in a black bag. So
yeah,
you can ask, and I'll just sound more snooty and elitist, and I'll be like,
yeah,
I know and you don't. Sorry.
I think the best thing is that exactly what Jeff's saying about the NDA and all that. Like the amount of information they trusted us with is why everyone is just so stuck. Hey, we got Destiny. Is why everyone is so stuck on the NDA, right? The shit they showed us was awesome. And one thing I can say is that when people talk about, well, I'll wait to see the proof and all that, they didn't just show us a PowerPoint project and say, hey, this is what we want to do. A lot of tangible, visuals were available.
This feels like a really big. Yeah, this is like when you realize that when you do this, you're digging yourself deeper and deeper in, right?
Yep, move it on.
All right, let's move it on. Yeah.
Do you Do you not hear the fire alarm in your background, or?
Hold on. No, there's no fire alarm.
I don't hear.
It sounds like there's a fire alarm with the batteries low, and it's beeping.
Oh,
like
that's weird. Yeah.
Oh, I don't hear that.
Smoke detector.
Oh yeah, I heard it now.
Oh, that.
That's not bothering you at all?
No, I didn't notice
Tell
until you guys
someone
said
to hear
something.
the fire alarm behind you. They think of something very different than a beep every minute, Steven.
Well, it is. It's a fire alarm. That's what it is. It's a fire alarm. I mean,
It's
it's
a
not like.
smoke alarm, not a fire alarm.
Okay, it's not there just to detect smoke. It's usually there because it wants to know if your fucking house is on fire. Does it technically just detect smoke? Sure, but it's a fire alarm.
Get all ranty and yelly if you like, but when you see a fire alarm behind you, they're not thinking of a smoke alarm beeping every minute. I'm sorry. Maybe in Nebraska.
I mean, in Nebraska, we replaced the batteries on our smoke detectors because we don't want our houses burned down, but maybe you guys have that dirty esports insurance money. Is that part of the Blizzard NDA? They'll pay for your house if your fucking shit burns down? Is that... Alright, what are we doing?
All right, so we're gonna move on. We need to kill a little more time before Kevin's gonna be ready. So one thing I do want to bring up is that I made a Team Luca post, and I haven't talked to any of these guys on here, so I'm not going to discuss like specifics about them being involved in it, but I am going to ask their opinions on it. Is that I really like the Home Story Cup format. I like the vibe. I like what Home Story Cup does, and I would really like something like that in North America. So I start fielding ideas of what we could do in North America, because I don't want to make it a carbon copy, right? As cool as Home Story Cup is, I think it would take away from Home Story Cup if I tried to do it, and I think it would make my event just nothing special, right? But there are people who are interested in it who could help make it a reality. And so I want to take the intimate feel, the casual feel, but then put some sort of twist on it. So without going into the details of what I thought yet, just on that idea alone, I'd like to kick it over to Fear Dragon and ask him what he thinks of doing something like that in North America, featuring North American players primarily.
So the initial thought that I had when you had talked about this was Home Story Cup features a lot of Europeans, and I think there are a lot more Europeans that are even well known by viewers than there are North Americans. Like when I start talking about North Americans, after like maybe 7 to like 12 of them, I start getting into like the semi-pro names that a lot of people won't recognize. Like that's not really the case when you start talking about a Home Story Cup. So I'm very wary about how many players like that are well known that people will be like, oh yeah, I really want to tune in for that like player from North America you're going to be able to get. I think there are a lot of like really cool players and everything, but a lot of them also are like high school kids like maybe freshman year, like sophomore years of college. Like they have like jobs, so like they're doing work. They're not like a lot of full-time people. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting getting all of those people there. And like, I don't know, it seems like a cool idea if you can pull it off, but I think that there's going to be a lot of hurdles to jump over.
All right, Jeff, your thoughts?
I mean, it's an awesome idea. I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon-y old esports man, so if I I could not count on either of my hands and my toes and my hairs in my head how many people are like, I'm planning on doing this thing in esports, and then it never fucking happens. So
yeah,
as a friend and a person that is a close critic of everything you do, bold move, Cotton. Like you got like just saying, hey, we want to do a Home Story style event.
Basically, what Jeff is trying to say is, unless you're actually going to host this,
you're
on
fucked.
thing
Yeah,
itself.
yeah. You got to do it now, but it's like if you don't, you like the internet doesn't forget. You're gonna have Reddit threads that you're gonna. Yeah, so I don't know. I hope you're further down the. I mean, you're not sharing details. That's cool. So and you said you're talking to people, so maybe it will happen. That's good. Putting a lot of esports people in a house and playing some games together, it's a pretty good formula. Like the stuff that gets in the way of that is the production level. Like Take has really good cameras. He actually has like a little German army that he marches around and they control those cameras. And like if you can do that kind of stuff, if you can do that, cool. But Take also doesn't really make money on his events. They just kind of sell his brand and they make his company more legitimate. But the actual event itself is usually it's ran in the red. Like it's an expense. It's a cost to then market himself. So there's a lot of misconceptions about esports. People are like, well, I thought if I run an IGN event in Las Vegas, I'll make $70 million. No, you don't. You make about $30,000 and you spent $1 million or more. Like, that's esports. It's an investment. You have to spend money to make money later, and a lot of those times it doesn't happen. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the
When-
2012 mentality.
Right.
Well, if we spend a whole bunch of money now, maybe if IGN gets bought by someone else, they won't cut the company and kill it. Yeah,
some
like,
people are paying off though. Like, ESL is doing really well. IEM at this point in time, and for a long time they were foot slogging it. Like, they were having a tough time, but they fucking made it through the storm. So it is possible. And I don't think you're doing this to get rich, obviously. Like that's not why you do it. But announcing it early, tickling people's balls, and then like the execution's going to be tough. So the odds are stacked against you.
I hope that people didn't take the perception you did, because I thought when I posted it is that it's an idea that I want to do, and that I'm trying to get an idea of what people would want to see before I create a partnership deck to then send out. So
yeah, I don't think people are gonna like you. You didn't say coming September, 2016.
yeah, I thought it was just kind of like a filling the water. That's the
Yeah,
vibe.
you're not completely fucked, but I do think like if you say, hey, what do you think about this idea, and then like absolutely nothing comes of it, I do think you Sundanced it a little bit, where he's like, hey, you guys, how do you feel about $1 million prize pool? And then like it's like, well, that sounds pretty great, and then it's like that was just a tweet, it's like, oh, okay, he's a weird idiot. Like, esports is filled with them. People are just like, hey guys, I was thinking about starting a championship series 1v1 tournament league for $5 million. And you're like, that sounds fantastic. And you're like, cool. Well, it'll never happen, but I was just thinking about it. It's like, all right.
No, I get what you're saying. Steven, any thoughts on you?
This is something that I've been interested in for like a while. The biggest question that I've had is it possible to run an event like this and make money off of it, right? The two biggest, well, there's like, it seemed like there were three huge hurdles that you had to come up with. The first one was travel. In 2011 and 2012, it was really easy to get teams to ship players all over the world for fucking whatever. Like, people do that shit. Right, Jeff? Like, in, like, 2012, it seemed like every team was willing to fly people, like, everywhere. Like, the amount of money that was flying around for flying people to other countries was fucking crazy. That is definitely not the case so much anymore. Like, you can get star players flown around, but, like, the average, like, even your average, like, A-line player doesn't seem like people are as quick to, like, just ship them off, on a $1,500 plane ticket. So travel is a big one. And if you're forcing players to pay to come to your event, I mean, you're cutting off pretty much every single Korean and, like, 99% of the Europeans. Although I guess if you just want to region lock it, that's okay. But even local travel, maybe, I don't know, that's... yeah, I don't know. The travel thing is big. If you're going to cover any travel, like, that's a huge expense that adds up really quickly. The second thing is production. Take TV has done a lot of tournaments. So Take has been able, Dennis has been able to, like, invest in, you could almost call it infrastructure in a way, right? Yeah. He's got his production crew, those cameras and the setup and everything they have. It's a lot of it is skill, like the technical know-how to be able to do it and run it. A lot of it is having the team that can work together and having everybody that can do it and run it all together and make it look nice and cohesive. And another thing is just the raw cost of all the equipment. Those cameras aren't cheap. The stands that those cameras are on aren't cheap. Having all the wiring set up and everything running smoothly and all the, like, that's a lot of money that he's dumped in and invested to build that production infrastructure that he has that works so well now.
Yep, I agree.
There's that. Yeah, there's that. Those are two things. And then the venue is another thing, too. Where would you host something like this?
So
go ahead.
I have three ideas. One is either a penthouse in Baltimore or Washington, D.C. And then the other is, if it's in the summer, like a condo in Ocean City, Maryland.
What are we talking for cost for this?
Cost for those that I've been looking at, ones that would like host to make it roomy enough for the kind of number of people that go, to have a game room, a control room for the cameras and all that, and then just a regular relaxing room, as well as a place to cast and kitchen. I'm looking at between $1,500 and $2,500 for a week rental.
Okay. So you're looking at $1,500 to $2,500 there. What have you thought about in terms of production?
So the people that I've been talking to, they wouldn't just throw me a check of money. They would actually provide all the equipment and the crew. So that's...
Wait, so you're getting a venue and the crew for production for $2,500 for a week?
No. So for the crew, that would be one of the sponsors for the event. Would be providing the crew, possibly some of the prize pool, and the professional production level equipment and the computers.
Are they giving you the crew, or do you have to find that on your own?
No, they would be bringing their own people. That's how they'd help. That would be their sponsorship.
That seems like a crazy good deal if you could actually get that.
So that's why I'm reaching out to get the ideas, because I need to create an actual good sponsorship deck for them to have something to work with.
And you would be region locking this essentially to only North American players?
I would highlight North American players. I haven't thought about Koreans, but I'd like to have a few Europeans there.
What are you looking at for prize pool?
Nothing insane. Like if I were to go, so that's all right. So we've got the idea now about the cup and just the idea of how we would feel. And it seems like there's a general consensus that a North American event like that would be cool. I've been thinking about different ways to do it. Am I just going to do a tournament with a few qualifiers, but mostly invites to get the people that I want to be there, or do I invite a bunch of people and we set up some kind of weird different tournament? Like maybe we have grudge matches, right? So one day it's just pure grudge matches, best of sevens between 10 different people, right? So maybe it's not as big of an invite list as a home story cup. Maybe it's not as big of a qualifier list, something like that. So we could just do it the regular 3-day tournament, or we could do a 2-day tournament, smaller groups, and then like the day in the middle, the grudge matches. I'm taking different ideas on the format that I'd actually like to do.
Sure. The only reason I ask about prize pool is because that'll determine how much you have to pay in travel, right?
Right.
If it was a $10 million prize pool, getting Europeans to come over would be very easy. If it's a $10,000 prize pool, you're probably going to be paying travel for almost anybody that you bring over.
Right. And I think the lack of if I can get away with not having to put so much into production costs myself, that frees up a lot of opportunity to maybe crowdfund if I need to, or go through other smaller sponsors, that aren't the title sponsor to help mitigate the travel costs.
That sounds like if I were just hearing this, like that sponsor that you are talking about sounds too good to be true. Like I'm like highly skeptical of that, because that sounds like a $5,000 to $10,000 sponsorship. Like not even looking at cash. Like if somebody, or maybe more, somebody's actually willing to provide all of the camera crew, all of the people that work on the getting all the scenes and everything set up, and the different monitors and everything set up, like all of that equipment, all of the technical know-how, and all of the team to do it, and then work it for you, and then actually to do that for free, that's like ridiculous. Like that's absolutely insane.
Yeah, well,
I think.
Oh, I want you guys to be involved in it, so I'll talk to you guys offline more about that. But I wanted to feel that kill some time.
Well, now it's gonna be super expensive. Jesus.
$20,000 a piece, right?
Yep.
Wow.
But yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to field your things out. Ravi, any final thoughts on just the idea? Anything that you think from your end you'd like to see, because you do work a lot with North American talent?
I mean, I could talk about like North American players that I would like to show up. I already kind of voiced my opinion. Like I think there's like small other random things in addition to all the things that In Control and Destiny talked about, like scheduling and trying to get like a good date where players will actually be able to fly out. Like it seems like a small deal, but if you, for example, you want to do a 3-day event, then players like in high school and college are gonna have to like miss classes and stuff, because again, these aren't full-time players. Like they have to go ask for permission from their parents to go do stuff. So like besides all that, I think it's like going to be you're going to hit a lot of obstacles, and I would really talk with Base Trade, because they're doing their first live event, and I think that you might be able to learn a lot from them. Like I know that you're like talking about like the penthouse and everything, and I think that's really cool, and I don't know like the extent that this like sponsorship would give you like the PCs and everything else, and then like you also have to worry about like internet for all of these PCs, and like there's so many other things like there. I don't know, like to me the idea of booking out like a PC gaming cafe seems really, really smart, but I don't know. I don't have enough information to like really make too much judgment calls, and also I've never run an offline event, so probably not the best person to ask.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys for the input on that. Just to clarify some things that I'm seeing in chat, this is not region locked completely. I do want to have some Europeans, maybe some Koreans. That's unsure yet. That's still to be decided. I was actually thinking if since this would get In Control and Steven here, maybe we could do it.
Why do you call him In Control?
As I said it, I swap both. Sometimes I call him Jeff. Sometimes I call you Destiny. It happens.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
But I was thinking maybe timing it with the 100th episode of the late game, so that we could do like a live episode the day before everything kicks off, kind of thing.
Stay away from timetables.
Yeah, that's a good point.
65.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds
weeks
interesting.
to assemble an offline event.
Right.
That sounds like a good idea, but I would like, if you were doing an offline event is a really huge deal, I would not try to like restrict it based on that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
What's Rifkin saying? Oh, it's Graham, isn't it?
Yeah.
Graham.
At the very least, we could do a live
Last
one.
name is Crackers.
It is.
And then we could do, what do you call it? Waterboarding that Steven brought up.
That'd be great.
Oh, dude, I'll do it if you can set it up.
No, you
100%.
won't.
Yes, I will. I'll do it.
won't.
1,000,000%. I'm committing
What
right
are you
here.
trying to do to players?
What?
No, not
What are you
players,
trying
each
to do to
other.
players?
I always said that I thought it would be interesting.
That kind of waterboarding.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
have him waterboarded.
No, if you lose, you get
That could
waterboarded.
be part of your that could be part of your fundraising. If you put that as like a goal or whatever, I'll do it. If you can get like some professional to do it.
I know people who know how to waterboard, so if we want to go
Everyone knows
that
how to
road.
waterboard. To be
Oh, that's not
waterboarded.
even true. It has to be somebody that can really do it. Because if I do it and it's like not an official guy, and like I end up doing fine, like people will be like, oh well, it's just fucking it's because the guy didn't do it right.
I have
Either
former
on your back or inclined backwards, you put a wet rag over your face, and someone pours water onto the wet rag.
Yeah, but people argue that the thickness of the towels is really important. The specific incline can be really important. How much water you pour and in what spurts can be really important. Like there
You
is
know what? If we get there, let's experiment. We'll do the different forms of waterboarding. Steven will find our sweet spot.
Well,
He comes out, he's like, all right, that was definitely the most terrifying. Okay. Wow, I thought I was drowning. Do it again. All right, just a little bit further back.
oh man, I know a few SEER school instructors, so if you need to have a professional do it, I've got someone that can do it.
that could be part of your Kickstarter goals, all right? If you reach a certain amount.
Get Steven waterboarded. There can be some
I'm
fun
genuinely
artwork for
interested in
it.
how many people would pay for this.
God.
I think like we just need to get like Anita Sarkeesian to tweet out that you're getting waterboarded and she wants to see it, and then
She can
we'll
do it.
be
That'd
good.
be amazing.
I don't think so.
All right, so we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to have the man, the myth, the legend, the QXC coming on. We're going to discuss Adepts and Liberators and all that stuff. So, Fear Dragon, though, before we go ahead and give your shout-outs and say where people can find you and what you have going on.
Fear Dragon 64 on everything, and yeah, I'm doing a tournament for something that I do called NA Ladder Heroes, and that's going to be this Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific, and you guys should tune in because
You
I had
better
exactly.
show up, players.
Yeah, otherwise I'll give you a strike, and then you can only get 2 more before I ban you from events.
Strike.
There you
Awesome. And to answer the question in the chat, North, any kind of like natural, basically I'm going to go by WCS rules. So I guess, Polt, Violet, and Jadong will all be allowed to participate as North Americans if I don't just decide to invite them and do a qualifier. So anyway, we will be back in 3 minutes. Talk to you guys soon. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the late game episode 35. I'm here with Destiny and In Control and our second guest for the evening, QXC. Today we're going to be talking with QXC about the Adepts and the Liberators. Also, In Control plays a hell of a lot of ladder on the Legacy of the Void beta, so those guys will be our main crutches for this discussion. We did have a replay that was played by Dragon. It was a really, really awesome game that he played yesterday, and it was just constant Adept aggression, followed on by Storms. I think he continued with Adepts and High Templar, Archon, and he used Liberators pretty nicely to zone out the units, things like that. So, unfortunately, we'll try to get next week to be able to bring the replay on and actually do play-by-play analysis. But in the meantime, I'm going to kick it over to QXC. We're going to start with you, and I want your overall opinion just on the Liberator in the TVP matchup, and if you've been using it.
Sure. So the Liberator's primary purpose is its air-to-ground attack. It has an air-to-air attack, but it's not really useful for anything. Phoenixes beat it, Void Rays beat it. You wouldn't catch Oracle, so whatever. Now that you can just get the Siege Mode upgrade just by building an armory, it's available pretty early, so you can do things like a 2-base timing, early 3-base timings with it. So Liberator is accessible pretty early on, but it's hard to commit to very early without taking a big risk because it's so vulnerable to things like Stargate units.
Mm-hmm.
As far as mid and late game usage, since it does 85 damage a hit, there's not a lot of damage wasted, and because the Protos units are relatively slow, it's hard for them to reposition. So normal usage of the Liberator is like Bio-Medevac Mine, so that your opponent can't just blink underneath the Liberators or blink around them. The mines help keep the Liberator safe if anything goes around or gets too close. And then you just kind of leapfrog the Liberators closer and closer to the Protoss' base and pick off units.
Okay. In Control, playing Protoss against Terran, what are your experiences going up against the Liberator?
I actually really like it right now in the sense that people are experimenting with like timing attacks. We're seeing it in TVZ as well. Liberator Hellbat is something that's a thing, I've been told. Obviously not first-hand experience there. In the TVP matchup, I've seen it as a part of a mech timing attack. And then I've been quite surprised by its strength. Like the nice thing about it is that some of the units have had unfortunate roles where it's like you'll see it in the early game and then it fucking disappears forever, right? Or you'll specifically see it in the middle of the game and then it disappears forever, or late game. This unit, I feel like, has some viability across the spectrum. It obviously ebbs and flows. I don't necessarily think it's like a... It's not like it used to be with the Cyclone, where it's like, well, you make them early, and then you make them mid, and you keep fucking making them until late, and then you just hopefully have 200 of Cyclones. Like, that was really boring, bad StarCraft. And I feel like the Liberator is a really cool unit in that you can get it early, but that pinches your economy a little bit. It's not necessarily a one-hit wonder. Like, it can get blinked under. If they do a blink opening, it's tough, and stuff like that. So I'm actually kind of over the moon with the unit. It's really fucking powerful, too. I got surprised. One game I was like, you know what? These gosh darn Colossus, I'm going to try them out. Like, they can't be that bad. I walked in with, like, 10 Colossus and the usual cast of supporting guys, and he remaxed on, you know, like a dozen Liberators, and they fucking annihilated it. And that's what I deserve. That's what I should have got. But I just like that they seem to be a pretty well-rounded, good unit, in my opinion.
Cool. So in the matchup, I guess...
Are you going to ask me my opinion about him?
Steven, have you played Legacy of the Void and gone up against the Liberator yet?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I agree with pretty much everything Jeff said, though. Yeah, they seem pretty cool. I like that they use some timing attacks. That's all I had.
Thank you, Steven.
Hey, Kevin, are they stronger in TVZ though? Like, I have a student and he's lower level, but I'm being told that like Liberator Hellbat is super strong. Is that?
So the secret, which BC and I discovered, are Ravagers.
Yeah, those are.
The Liberator like sieges and then sits in place, and then the Ravager
just ravage that spot and they die. Yeah.
You have
How
just
many
enough.
shots is it? Is it 3 or?
Three, I think.
People are rediscovering the Ravager. It's so funny because like for a while when they were ridiculously strong, everyone was like, "Oh, geez, this is like one-base Ravagers." Then they nerfed it. They disappeared completely. Like nobody made a single fucking Ravager. Then they put the range back at 6, and all of a sudden, my Protoss brain is breaking every game where I'm like, well, okay, I'm behind, but I have 8 sentries, so I'll just force field everything forever and be fine. And then he shows up and I'm like, oh, Jesus, it's Ravagers! What are those things? They just stomp the force fields, and it's nice. I think they've come back in a good way. In a good way, like, this is what they should have been.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The design of the Ravager now is a lot better than it was before. Before it was just like, hey, this unit does like as much damage output as a Marine, and it's got this like bile thing, and you can get it at hatch tech, and I don't really understand like what the drawbacks of it were, and then they made it right, and then they made it like
It's cheap. It builds fast. It outranges all stack defenses. It was like, yeah, you kind of just.
That was like the craziest thing about the Ravager. Like, I played so many games where I was trying to do these timing attacks, and then I played the ZVZ where this guy fucking wrecked me with Ravagers. I had no idea how he got him out so fast. And that was the game that I found out, oh, you can get Ravagers without even making a fucking lair? Wait, are you serious? Holy shit. Yeah, that unit's pretty good. Or was like really ridiculous.
It was broken. No, it's good.
Yeah, it's in a good spot with the 6 range. I don't really see them much. As far as Liberator Hellbat against Zerg goes, I don't think that's a comp that's going to stick around for very long. I think it's kind of like Mass Reaper against Zerg. You know, when you don't really understand the game or you haven't seen it before, it's going to kill you. But I don't think it's going to stick around for much longer.
I can agree. I think a lot of Zergs are already figuring it out and getting rid of the timing pretty easily. One thing I will say, though, is I was watching Top Play, and he has just enough time. If you see they do have Ravagers, right, there's just enough time to move it out of the way before you get hit. But you have to act like almost preemptively before you think
the Liberator? You can unsiege it and not get hit?
Yeah.
It unsieges really quickly. It unsieges faster than it sieges, which is
4 seconds and 2 seconds, I think.
I don't know.
Okay.
Slower and faster.
Yeah. So overall, I think the unit's being pretty well received. I did like the armory change, and at first, we watched Lycan League last week. A lot of people were dying to Liberator Hellbat pushes. I think that's how the STC closed out his series in the last in the finals. But then you have people shutting it down now already on the ladder. So I like the unit. I really do. I think it offers a unique dynamic to the different matchups. Let's now turn it to the Adept, and we'll go to In Control first on the Adept. And, aside from any crazy all-in, how's the Adept working into your play?
It is a core unit, and that's something that it was intended to be, actually. One of the fears that I know Destro was having in particular, and some other people, was that it would replace the Zealot altogether. With only 25 gas being the difference between the two of them, like, range, durability, the ability to project itself forward, like, it seems like a steal in that regard. And I don't necessarily think he's wrong. But yeah, the Adept doesn't have a whole lot of drawback. Like, things like Lurkers really eat them up, but guess what? Lurkers eat everything on the ground pretty good. So it's not like the Adept specifically is at risk there. And then its early game shenanigans is very powerful. A lot of salt about that unit, and I do think it's one of those, like, it seems to be a traditional Protoss unit that is made to make lower level players very upset because it's extremely easy to use, and when you make a lot of them, they tank well and they deal decent damage to light units in particular. So it's like, if you're not a more skilled StarCraft player, the Adept must be this really salt-inducing thing. For me personally, and how I've seen it implemented, it's really cool across the board in the different mashups, and I don't. A guy was posting on Team Liquid saying that he's got this 1-base 4-gate Adept Warp Prism build that kills Terran like 95% of the time. Whatever, those kind of builds come around, and usually people find out that they're not as strong as they thought, but it just does well in a certain meta. And right now, obviously, 1 Rax Expand is like the dominant thing for Terrans. I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, I actually pretty much like it. I don't know that it's. I think if it gets nerfed, it'll fall the way of the Reaper, where it's like, it's not super good, in my opinion, but it is good. Definitely, it is good. I would never tell you otherwise, but I don't think it's broken. I think it's pretty okay, and it's being seen in all 3 matchups, which is a cool thing for a unit. But it's also not like your end game army is literally just Adepts. If you do that, you will die across the board, all 3 matchups. Yeah. And in PvP, actually, while it can be a core unit, you do trade it out for the more heavy-hitting stuff later in the matchup, which I also like as well. So I actually think it makes the game more interesting right now as it is.
So I would like to see the Adepts early game utility toned back a little bit, and its mid and late game utility increased slightly. So I think the potential here of what you were alluding to, like oh, I made 2 adepts and I killed your 5 marines and then the game ends. It's actually very high, and it's very frustrating. It's very annoying. We've seen Terran players have seen a lot of like, I'm going to get a Nexus, I'm going to make 10 probes on it, and then I'm going to 4-gate Adept Warp Prism. And if you don't scout the Warp Prism before it, because it's going to drop 4 Adepts and then it's going to warp 4 more in. If you don't get to that Warp Prism before those 4 extra Adepts warp in, the game ends. And
so on that concept, like I agree with you pretty much absolutely. I think one of the things that, and I hope like it's actually worked out pretty nicely, and I hope this is on purpose, is I feel like TVP it's actually quite a bit stronger almost in the mid and late game because Terrans don't have to worry about diversifying their composition. Like in the past, it used to be, hey, I'm going Colossus. No, it's a trick. It's 1 no-range Colossus, and I'm going ground. And the Terran is tricked because they have 8 Vikings, but that was all it took to throw them off. Now, there's no tricking Terran. You're not going Colossus, and if you do... it's actually, you tricked yourself. You're like, well, maybe, and I'm not even exaggerating, guys. Like, I'm not being pessimistic. It's actually that bad. Like, just straight up Marauder Medevac Marine will just sidestep whatever it is and shoot the Colossus that's doing almost no damage anyways. So right now, I'm finding, like, the mid-game of TVP very robust for Terran. I'm not sitting here saying it's broken or like, there's nothing we can do. But what I am saying is that if they do tinker with the early game, they have to be careful, because like what Kevin said, I don't disagree, but they would have to buff something in the mid-game. Because if Terran can comfortably, in the early game, not scan, not really scout, except for the normal like Oracle DT shenanigans, which are both simplified by a missile turret, then all of a sudden things are getting a little bit... Like, if they seamlessly go into the mid-game, it's really fucking hard for Protos there.
So what I'm imagining is something like Adepts have 10 less shields or 20 less shields, but then the Twilight upgrade gives them an additional 20 or something like that. Or the psionic transfer, the image projection lasts like 1 or 2 seconds shorter, but then the Twilight upgrade brings it back up to what it is now. Because the
That's
Adept,
an easy fix, you're right.
it feels really good in the mid game. Like, it's a super strong harass unit. It's incredibly annoying to deal with, but it's not like 2 Adepts get into your mineral line 10 minutes into the game and you lose. It's like, yeah, you'll take some damage, that's okay. It's just that early game where, like, oh, you were macroing and, like, the 2 Adept images got up your ramp because you didn't wall off, and, like, now they're trading with your Marines, and there's an Oracle coming in, and then the game ends. And those are the kind of situations that feel really bad with the Adept right now.
Yep.
I can agree with that. So
I feel like some of the Adept itself. This is like a really weird thing that I didn't feel this way at all with Heart of the Storm or Wings of Liberty, but I feel like some of the units in StarCraft 2 like don't look like the Legacy of the Void units, which is weird because normally this doesn't happen, but it feels like they don't look how they are. I guess like was it the Cyclone that was like super fast, really tanky, and like really small and 2 What the fuck? The Adept feels the same way. When I started playing some games and I've got like 6 roaches and they do 2 volleys and it's like still alive, it's like, what the fuck? Like, this thing has so much life. Like, I don't know, that looks really weird.
It'd be like in HOTS if the Colossus was the size of a Marine. I mean, that's an extreme example, but like, you'd have a really hard time visually relating how it looks to how strong it is. And yeah, the Adept is definitely like that. Like,
which is weird because normally the art in StarCraft 2 is like always been one of its strongest points, where things look and act like that. So but that was so weird with the Adept. Yeah, it's so fucking strong.
It's only like slightly bigger than a Marine, but it's like 4 times as tanky as one. Yeah. Okay. And going back to the Zealot thing, so I know they're working on some other ways to differentiate the Zealot from the Adept. We'll have to wait and see what those are, but I've heard through the grapevine that there are plans to try and experiment with that, because Blizzard is aware right now that the Zealot and the Adept have slightly too many overlapping roles.
Okay. My question is, and yeah, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of having you here, Kevin. How are you opening against Protoss to be able to do what you want to do in the game?
So there's basically two main styles, and they're not much different from HOTS. You know, you tech, you go mines or medevacs or whatever, and then you go into bio, or you go into bio and then you go into bio. And
so just 3 racks after expand.
yeah, it's the main thing against Protoss and Legacy is just make sure you wall off and that you have good scouting. And normally the scouting is like seeing their tech building on one base, or like their early tech building after they've taken their nexus. I think the more important scout here, if you can see the tech building, that's good. But seeing the probe count on the natural and the gases is usually more informative, because it's pretty easy for them to hide some of the buildings, and it's actually really hard to scout now because the Adepts come out so early, and it's like they already have an Adept and a Mothership Core by the time that they would put down their tech building, so usually you can't really get in. It's hard to reliably scan, so you're checking the natural usually just to get an idea, and then it's just wall off, make sure you're paying attention to the Adept images, and try and get to the mid game. Once you have Medivacs and Stim and Shields, it's pretty straightforward, very much like HOTS.
Okay. Are you adding ghosts in to deal with the tankiness of the Adept?
It's like a late game thing, but usually...
Ghosts or Widow Mines. Widow Mines do
Yeah.
fine too.
Widow Mines are usually the go-to, because they're just easier to get.
Right.
Like, you already have the factory, it doesn't make your army that much smaller, whereas like ghosts cut into your barracks production time, and they're really expensive, and it's like, what does the EMP actually get you versus the Widow Mines? Usually you just Widow Mines, but eventually, yeah, you'll add ghosts.
Cool. All right. So that, I guess, was the brunt of the discussion. Steven, do you have any final thoughts? I don't know how much you've been playing Legacy of the Void. So is there anything just in Legacy in general you'd want to talk about?
Not really. I really don't like. I remember I felt this way when I came back because they added the ladder, so I started playing some. One thing that kind of bothered me was it feels kind of weird that like of the new Protoss units that were being added, they feel like a little bit. Almost like something I would expect to see from the Onion. I don't know. The Adept active seems a little bit strange. Like we always complain about like lack of counterplay to Protoss, and then you get like the Adept, which it can go invulnerable and run into your base, and you can't do anything about it unless you're walled off. And then you've got like the Disruptor.
Yeah, Disruptor.
Yeah, that goes invulnerable and then attacks you, and you can't do anything about it. It's like, well, okay, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Otherwise, the game feels like decent right now. Aside from maybe some Protoss issues, I like what's going on with it. I guess we'll wait and see how things pan out as they continue to work on it.
Yeah, I think overall Legacy feels like it's a pretty good spot, except in general Protoss feels a little weak later in the game and a little bit too strong with the early game. And that mostly comes back to the Adepts. Like they just don't scale super well into the late game, and with the Colossus gone and the Disruptor in kind of a questionable place. I don't know. Jeff, what do you think about the new Disruptor?
You feel like a fucking baller when it's used in those right situations, right? Like I actually had a nice comeback PvP where he didn't have Blink, it was low econ situation, and the Disruptor just wrecks, you know, if you can't get away from it. But yeah, in mega late game, as a part of a fight, I find it to be like one of those things where it's like, if you look away, 3 Disruptors will blow up your entire army. If you're paying attention and playing on par, they should do almost nothing. You know, like the damage they actually do is you had to run as opposed to stay and fight, so I'm doing damage to your army. And because they reduce the cost of them, I think that's drawing it closer to having more utility in that way. And because the Robo is otherwise useless, except for if you're making Immortals or War Prisms.
Oh, I was going to ask, have you played it post-nerf?
Yeah.
Was it a nerf?
It seems like,
they shortened the radius by a lot.
Yeah.
But they also made it way cheaper. So
yeah,
100 gas cheaper.
Yeah.
It feels really bad right now. It almost feels worthless. Like
it's not the same. It was too strong before. Probably the radius was probably too big. But then it was also like it's in a weird place because I don't disagree with you guys at all in the sense that like it was too big, but then it was too expensive for what it is because it's like one of those things where it's like, holy fuck, if I hit you, yes, I'm gonna win this game, or it's like, holy fuck, he's kiting, no, you know, like. And people were like rushing him out to defend against Ravagers, but that's a dark era back then. But now it's like, you know, they're not the Colossus. They're not going to be. They're very special units that they require a lot of control. They're best with Warp Prisms, which are fantastic. I love the Warp Prism mechanic, but that's really hard on a lot of people. And then I can also see this again being one of those salt-inducing units where it's like, I can see the guys in gold and silver who are like, yeah, so hi, I'm playing this guy who shows up with 12 Disruptors and. They're invincible. They kill me. I've checked Steven's blog. It's probably supposed to be made by The Onion. Like, this is so fucking terrible. And people are like, well, you're supposed to kite or pick up. And he's like, well, I can't fucking micro. Shut your face. Like, I hate you, you know? Like, it's going to be bad in that sense. But at the higher level, I think they're going to be very ineffective. They're going to be harassing mineral lines, and then, like, that'll go on for 20 seconds, and the guy's like, oh, shit, I have to make a Viking as a Terran. I have to make a single fucking Viking. Or I already have Liberators. Like, either one, you know?
I think like another thing that goes into it, and this is starting to feel. Oh, let me preface this first, so that it doesn't sound like I'm being horribly biased. It feels like, and I'm only playing. I think I'm like Masters or whatever on the beta right now. I haven't played too much. Lurkers feel way too strong. They feel very strong. In Brood War, it was kind of hard, but you could actually dodge Lurker shots in Brood War. Like you could micro around the volleys, which could be really important parts of the micro. I don't think that's possible in Legacy of the Void. Those shots are like almost instant. The range is massive, and the damage is huge. Like you could be fighting a Protoss army, like run up like 6 Lurkers to the side, and then they try to kill them, but you like 4 burrowed, and like all your fucking army is dead. Like you're completely fucked.
The funny thing about their range is like so what you would do, because you can't contest them as a Protoss on the ground. The only thing you can do is like partition them off and pick them out. You know, like classic stuff, but the casting range for Force Field it's less than the range of the Lurker, so a lot of times what happens, the Lurker actually burrows. You're like, oh, Jesus, Force Field off, and then they kill all the sentries that did that anyways.
Yeah. The Lurker feels... I don't know how... The range couldn't have been that long in Brood War, right? Because I feel like in Brood War, they were used for, like... They were, like, zone control, and, like, you had to be really careful in the positioning. And, like, in StarCraft 2, it's like, okay, I got fucking 8 Lurkers. Like, let's fucking run up and see what happens. Like, I don't know.
They were 6 range in Brood War? They were the same range as a Dragoon?
It's more that Dragoons tanked against them decently well, but also that you needed to have Dark Swarm to make Lurkers really strong. And in that case, you knew, okay, well, I'm going to back off because I can't fight here.
Right.
But so it was like a Zerg force field, kind of. But every like Terran and Protoss had tanky units, or they had like a Reaver, which is a mainstay of the army, and Storm, which is actually stronger in Brood War. Yeah. So they had ways to deal with it as it's coming at them. And then Terran, of course, would just, you know, like, they were just fucking all over the place with Marine Medic. But they could also, if you get really fancy, use, like, Science Vessel shields, and then you go over here, and if they're shooting this guy, then the Lurker dies in 2 seconds.
Right. I'm just trying to imagine Brood War Lurkers with 9 range. And I think it would be, like, kind of like this. Like, it would just fucking break the entire game.
Yeah. And again,
But... Yeah.
Looking at everything you mentioned in Brood War, and we're not going down this route, the Milkus route of dick riding everything in Brood War, but all of the counterplay in Brood War is interesting. Like, you bring up, like, the Science Vessel. You remember the games where you'd have, like, the Science Vessels and the Scourge playing the back and forth? You'd have, like, the Plague and the Science Vessel going back and forth. The Science Vessel trying to land irradiates the Plaguers. The Defilers trying to land Plagues. Like, all that counterplay. The counterplay was interesting. Arbiters dropping Stasis, the Reaver and the Shuttle Micro, the High-Tech, like, all of that was interesting. One of the problems I feel that Protoss has always suffered, and this kind of goes back to like my whole like Protoss is dirty like that thing, is that it's really hard. I feel like it's really hard to like cheer for or to feel good. Like Protoss always feels like the villain. It seems, maybe I'm biased to play Zerg, but like in all the games, like when they win, like the wins just feel so dirty. The immortal Sentry wins, like fuck, like you walk into Force, everything's like, okay, I mean, good job, you won. And like I feel like when I look at units like the Adept and the Disruptor, it's kind of like the same shit. Or like remember PvZ in like 2012 when it was just like it was literally just Colossus Sentry and the Zerg could do nothing but make those god awful units the Corruptor, and like that was it. And then it was just like every game was a steamroll and shit like that. And it seems like you run into things where like Protoss is all built around, well, counterplay is really hard. Or you have to do something before the Protoss gets to this point, otherwise you're fucked. Like if they're dropping disruptors in your base out of the warp prism, like, oh well, now you're fucked because it's all invulnerable and they can pick up from a range and you're fucked. Or like, oh well, you let 2 Adepts, you know, do their little spell bullshit outside your base, now they're in their base fucking you. Or oh, he got good force field, so you deserve to lose your whole army. Or oh, you want to attack, but he's got the mothership core and now he casts Photon Overcharge and now you can't really go in and attack at all. Or oh, like oh well, his whole army's out of position, but he recalled his whole army back using the mothership core and now you can't do it. Like I don't know, like maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it always feels like Protoss has like that trend of like kind of like cock block, like anti counterplay, like it just kind of does its stuff, and it's always felt like really weird as a result of that, like the way that Protoss sits as compared to like Terran or Zerg. Not to say that it's too strong or too weak or even to talk about balance, just from like a design point of view. I feel like Protoss has always suffered from that, which is one of the reasons why I was disappointed when like 2 of the new units, the Adept and the Disruptor, both involve instances of invulnerability where it's like, well, okay.
I don't know if I have too much to say about that. It felt pretty. I've always felt frustrated about Protoss, and not from a balance perspective, but more just like the way that you have to play against them, and then the way that you can lose to them. Things like 6-gate, blink, you know, DTs, the one Oracle that flies in your base and the game ends. And Terran has a bit of that, you know, like you look away and
30 probes.
Yeah, you look away and 3 mines burrow and like the game ends.
Sure.
But it feels like Protoss has more of that.
Yes, they're the trickster race in StarCraft 2 for some reason. Like in Brood War and StarCraft before this, they were like the Juggernaut. Like it was just that's the army. Holy fuck! Like how are you gonna deal with that? And everybody else was like smaller collections of armies. But in StarCraft 2, it's definitely like every PvZ. I feel like this so much. I'm like, all right, how are we gonna do this? Let's see.
That feel when the Oracle flies into your middle field, you see the Zerg just like pull drones, like, oh, no spore. Huh, well, I'm gonna go ahead and kill me 7 to 12 drones right here.
While we're on the Protoss topic, I want to query you guys about the and no circle jerking. This is genuinely, since I have you guys here talking about it. Let's talk about the Mothership Core Photon Overcharge, the Mothership Core and Photon Overcharge.
Hate it so much.
Terrans hate it, yeah.
The only thing
I think everybody should hate it. Protoss too. Like
even Protoss hates it.
It's like, okay, well, we have a big
I
problem.
know life without it, bro. I'm like, oh no.
Early game is like, well, fuck, we got all these problems with the Protoss. Like, the early game is so fucked. It's like, okay, well, we could try to balance this out using different units, different build. Like, how are we gonna do this? What if we give them a unit that makes like planetary nexus so that they can't just be attacked, and then we just get to the mid game. It's fine. Like, okay, well, I mean, that seems kind of like not the ideal solution, but I guess. I don't know. I think Photon Overcharge is like a huge cock block. It does lend itself to more stability in some matchups, especially PvP, but that stability comes at the cost of like any interesting early mid game. In my opinion, against Protoss. Like, do you feel? I guess QXC or even in Control, although you might have the Protoss spies, but QXC has the Terran. Do you feel like in PvP that like the existence of the Mothership Core kind of cock blocks the early game?
So the problem though is that I'm trying to remember Protoss without the overcharge, and it was like it's not pretty. It's what you're saying though. It's like
that was before medevac boost.
Yeah, there were issues.
Oh God.
There are issues with Protoss design-wise and gameplay-wise that were fixed by the Mothership Core and Photon Overcharge. I just don't think that was the way that we wanted.
It was a band-aid. That's I think the best word that.
Man, I hate Photon Overcharge. The only thing I hate more than Photon Overcharge is old Swarm Hosts.
I feel that's pretty strong still.
Well,
I mean,
maybe old Infester Broodlord. Remember those days?
I try not to.
Oh,
okay, so now has there been anything in your mental workings as this discussion has continued to go on that you thought might be a good suggestion for a change to fix the issues that Photon Overcharge just kind of put newspaper on?
So the idea. So part of the problem is that. At the same time that they introduced Photon Overcharge to fix some of Protoss's early game stuff, they also introduced new units that fucked Protoss if they didn't have Photon Overcharge. Right? So like Widow Mines, if Terran didn't have Widow Mines, then Photon Overcharge isn't as big of a deal. Like it's still of course useful in a lot of circumstances, but Widow Mines are like, you're not paying attention, you lose the game because you lost 12 probes.
Yep.
And they were introduced at the exact same time, so it's like, well, I don't know about that. But from a pure just like how could we make Overcharge a little nicer to play with without actually making it stronger or weaker? The idea that I had was you make it cost 25 or 50 energy, but then you have the duration be significantly shorter than the cooldown. And so it's a more strategic use. It's not just, oh, I Photon Overcharge, I'm invulnerable for a minute, then I have another 100 energy, I'm invulnerable for another minute. Of course, it's not actually invulnerability.
Invulnerable,
but,
as in, I hope he doesn't have 2 medevacs of units, then I'm dead.
It depends what point in the game it is. Like, early game, it is invulnerability.
Yes.
But later in the game, it's not. But so, I'm imagining a Photon Overcharge that costs 50 energy, it lasts for 20 seconds, and it has a 35-second cooldown. And so the idea is, yes, you can use it more frequently in terms of having mana up for it, but there's a very specific window of vulnerability that your opponent can exploit afterwards, and there's a very specific window of vulnerability that you know you have to be ready for when you use it. And so instead of just like this 2 minutes of the Nexus being a planetary fortress, you have the damage coming out, and then you have a window, and then you have more damage. So it creates more play and interactions back and forth. Of course, it might be a terrible idea, right? You never know until you try stuff.
Right.
That's the first thought that I've had.
I think that's a pretty decent idea, actually. I think it'd be cool to see them throw that in the beta for a little bit to see how it works. Jeff, from the Protoss perspective, has there been any thought of you of what you would like?
You know, for me, like a lot of people feel really strongly about this stuff. To be honest, I'm a little bit more laissez-faire about this. Like I'm okay with a world where you don't have the Photon Overcharge, but I think it's like, again, to kind of go back to that same idea of like it'll naturally figure itself out. If you do that, you have to give Protoss quite a few different kinds of buffs, and I don't know that people would be happy with those buffs. Of course, when I say people, I mean the majority. Obviously, fucking people are upset about everything.
I'd say fuck Reddit on this. Like, I think most reasonable people 100% would agree with that. Like, everybody that's early, I say that. I mean, I know there's fucking idiots out there, but I would be totally fine with giving Protoss whatever they need to survive the early game or mid game without having to rely on Photon Overcharge. Like, if you're calling to get rid of the mothership core with no other compensation, then obviously you're fucking idiotic. But like, I don't think anybody reasonable would ever say it's like, oh, like, you know, like Sentry voice build is freaking lame. Mothership core is really lame. Yeah. Like, compensate Protoss with other units. Yeah, sure. I don't think anybody should be opposed
I do
to that.
like, you know, to go back to something Steven was talking about earlier too, where he says, you know, like counterplay. Like there is a little bit of like the early game drop, Photon Overcharge. Okay, that was shut down, and there's not a whole lot of leeway there. Like the guys that go for it get lucky 1 in 5, but most of the time, you pull the probes, the medevac dies, you target down the fucking Widow Mine, like nothing happens.
Yeah.
So if you buff things like Stalkers or whatever, some unit that gives you strength in the early game to defend that, it rewards the player that has positioning. Like, okay, I think he's going drop, so I have my 5 now stronger Stalkers, Dragoons, whatever in my base, and I pick it off, and they're strong enough to do that. Okay, I'm rewarded for my decision making. That seems more interesting and better. And of course, I think the fear is that sends a ripple through the entire game. Like if you buff Protoss core units, you need to nerf force fields. You need to probably take out Photon Overcharge. Like you're actually getting into the design of the race, which a lot of people are calling for. And what I can say from our meetings with them, like they're not opposed to. It's something that they're hearing from Koreans, Europeans, non-Koreans, everybody. So it could happen. And it's in the past I've been a lot more flippant about where people are like, we need to redesign Protoss. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. They'll never do it. No, Jeff was a little bit of a fucking idiot. Like they're actually talking about it. So that would be okay. Like if we make things more interesting to reward better positioning, cool.
I think that they are making some pretty drastic changes. I think that the warp changes in particular, where you have to put a warp gate, you know, like a proxy a warp gate, and then, you know, you can also upgrade a pylon, like those kind of things for early aggression and, you know, forward aggression. I think those are some pretty awesome changes. Did you guys have any thoughts when they announced those changes?
Upgrade pylon, sure, but again, like this goes to the same thing. Like guys, in Legacy of the Void, Protoss is the weakest race. Not nearly as bad as it was. It used to be a joke. It used to be like actually kind of funny. Now there's Protoss making waves, and it's okay. Like when I play and stream for 4 or 5 hours, I don't feel like I'm literally in like the darkest, deepest prison, just getting, you know,
cucked.
Exactly. It's not like that. It's more like, okay, this is pretty cool, and when I lose, it's like, all right, I probably should have seen that coming, or this composition absolutely doesn't work. That happens. But of the 3 races, if we're talking about removing Photon Overcharge, if we're talking about messing with warp gates, like that's like the only gimmick well, no, that's one of the 3 gimmicks we have. It's really good. You do have to give a buff somewhere else, otherwise they fall completely off the plank. Like that's so Protoss too. Like you come up with a bad map, they're just like, well, okay, I actually can't do anything here. It's like, oh, come on. Zerg and Terran figured it out. They're like, yeah, I know. We're fucked. So this map's not made for Protoss. We're dead.
Yeah, right. Post Disruptor nerf, I think it's unquestionable that Protoss is the worst race at the moment. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think they're gonna. I mean, they're definitely taking into consideration the redesign on certain things. There are certain things they believe are core to the race, but even as a Terran, I want to see Protoss get a little stronger. Just not with the Adept. I hate early game Adepts. I wish they couldn't 2-shot my Marines. But yeah. So I think any final thoughts, just Legacy of the Void in general, before we wrap up the show with the questions.
It's just going really well. I think
the ladder was great. Yeah. Thank God they added a ladder. It's so fun. There's other changes they haven't implemented just yet, like some UI ones. The chat's a lot better, although it's kind of weird how hard it is to leave a channel. I feel like I feel a little bit weird that way.
You are always in SC2 looking for team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to abuse whatever most abusive build comes out until I get Grandmaster, and then once they actually balance the game completely, I'll never be able to do that again. But that's my goal for Legacy of the Void ladder. And
this is so viewership and popularity aside, this is the brightest time that StarCraft has ever seen. There's more development going on. There's more interaction with the devs, more interaction from Blizzard, more bigger changes coming to the game. That we've never seen anything like this. Even in early StarCraft 2 beta, we didn't have this level of interaction, this level of change, and hope on the horizon. So that's really cool. Like, Legacy is going to be an incredible game. It'll be really interesting to see 1, 2 months, 3 months from now when a lot of these changes finally go through and we see them in the game.
I can agree more. And another thing is, I mean, the tournament scene. I really feel like 2015 and even some of the things we're seeing for early 2016, we've had a lot of content. There have been a lot of SC2 events. So I think we're doing really well right now. We're going to go ahead and kick it into the questions time now, everyone. I actually did vet a lot of these. New rule: if you ask a question that I can perceive as asinine and just trying to get my goat or someone else's goat, and your account is only 15 seconds old, you will not have your question read. Sorry, Chief.
Whoa!
But
Crush it, nerds!
Wait,
why
why
did
don't
you
you
just
just...
a dick, dude? Fuck.
New rule: if your question's mean and you have a new account, I ain't reading it.
Well, no, not just fucking mean like something absurd. There's one specific one I'm talking
Why are
about.
you trying to make excuses about being literally Hitler? Just accept it.
All right. Anyway. All right. For my first solution, let's jump to question number 1. And it's going to be it's a question about Destiny 2. Of course it's at the top because you haven't been here in a while. So
Hey, Destiny, why are you running a tournament? Oh, I'm sorry, Destiny.
Do you want to know the real reason why I'm not doing it?
I assume it's because Legacy isn't out yet and you're waiting for
No,
that.
it's because when I did the fucking tournament, part of the things was I said that I would put the extra money that I was received in the donations, I would put it towards the next one, which is like $400, $500. Why the fuck would I run another tournament so that I have to spend that money when I could just save it?
That's exactly right. Damn. At least you're honest about it.
All right.
No, really, I don't know. I mean, I got out of StarCraft for a while. I'm starting to come back to it more. I mean, I'm really looking for the opportunities. Maybe that'll be the, maybe because of all these new bridges I'm rebuilding and my relationship with Lycan and that Zoe girl or whatever, maybe it'll be like an official Destiny 2, StarCraft 2 launch. I'm not saying it's happening, but it's possible. And if enough people pressure Blizzard, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
I want to see you in a full suit at BlizzCon on a standing desk between the Plot Brothers casting. That's my dream, Steven.
I'll work on it, okay?
Oh boy, I can't wait for this timing attack.
All right, going to the next question. I already talked about Home Story Cup. The idea. Now let's see. Okay, so many claim that they were not streaming Legacy of the Void because there was no ranked. But after 2+ weeks of introduction of ranked, there seems to be still very few streamers during Legacy of the Void. Do you guys have any comments about that? That's basically what his question is.
It's like active players like QXC and others are going to play Heart of the Storm because that's still WCS. I mean, I'm sure QXC's played a lot of Legacy of the Void as well. That's just going to be the split. Like, for me, I have no stake in Heart of the Storm right now, but I'll still play some if something comes up. But otherwise, I'm really interested in Heart of the Storm or Legacy of the Void, and it's at a competitive level, and it's got a ladder, which means the games are semi-meaningful. So.
And one of the questions that are actually going to come up, we'll address it now. So Scion was actually reaching out to everyone that streams and everyone that produces content, asking, how you felt about combining Legacy of the Void and Heart of the Swarm, because it's been a consensus among the bigwigs, I guess, that it was splitting viewership, right? So you're going to one, people aren't, you're not getting the residual going to the other, right? So that's one of the reasons they combined on Twitch the category for both Legacy of the Void and Heart of the Swarm. And I think they're hoping that will also drive up the Legacy of the Void viewership. Let's see.
Seems reasonable.
Yep.
I think it's mostly what Jeff is saying, though. Like, there's just not that many people streaming StarCraft in general. And there's even fewer of those that there's a fewer like a smaller subset that are streaming Legacy. That's just it. That's how it is. There's nothing super complicated about it.
Agreed.
So you're saying StarCraft 2 is confirmed dead? Is that?
All right.
I'm just kidding.
With the success of the Red Bull Archon qualifiers, do you think it can provide a secondary tournament scene? Obviously not overtaking the standard, but do you see it as something that could be done? Also, congrats to QHC for him and Beastie for qualifying through his and then they want your thoughts on Archon mode. So, first part of the question is, do you see it as being a new type of tournament format?
I think it could be like a side tournament.
Yeah.
Like, at least initially, tournament organizers will probably be a little skeptical to do like a big Archon mode thing, but I could see ESL doing something like, hey, we have IEM, Gamescom, and it's got a 1v1 tournament, and we have like a one-day Archon mode, invite only, and it's like a 4-team tournament or something, and they'll see what the reception is like. And if it does well, then maybe there will be like a standalone event or something like that. Everybody I've talked to really likes Archon mode.
Yes.
All of my partners have enjoyed it. I haven't talked to a single person that
That's
said,
a weird way to say that.
Yeah, they
Like
enjoyed it.
fucking
Yeah.
Bill Cosby. What the fuck? Sorry.
Nobody I've talked to has said they didn't like Archon mode. So I think it's got great potential, especially as more people get access to Legacy. You know, a big thing is it's not. I don't really want to queue Archon mode with a random person.
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. And some of the people who have stuck around with StarCraft, they got into beta, but maybe their friends aren't in, or their friends aren't really interested in playing it yet, or whatever. But as more people get access to the Legacy and they get more familiar with Archon mode, I think we're going to see it pick up some momentum.
I think I like your idea about the, let's say like IEM goes, right, and you have the 3-day event comes to Sunday, you're doing the finals. If on that last day you actually just let people that, dropped out on day 1, day 2, partner up and play in the Archon tournament, right? And then, you kind of like what they did with the WCS finals this past season is you do the Archon mode finals first on the main stage, and then you do the finals on the stage.
We
So,
did it. We
You know
found
what,
the one
actually-
person that liked that.
You know what
Well.
actually makes Archon mode really interesting is if Archon mode were to be integrated more into the pro scene, it would actually give a reason
will.
for having teams.
It will.
Oh,
Like,
I don't know about that.
Team
I don't
would
know about
actually mean something. What was it? I don't follow the scene, but Jesus fuck, who was the Korean guy? Were they doing picks for some tournament and he
Oh.
picked his team?
4GG and Daishi, was it?
Yeah.
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 That
What the
poor guy.
fuck?
Yeah,
It
no.
seems like I don't want to use the word like, or never mind. But I mean, like that's fucked up. Like
No.
like
So I agree with what you're
He was
saying.
18-0 against him before that too.
like
so
what a dick. Like what? That seems like.
Whoa. All
super-
right, so here's the thing: is that it's a 1v1 game. Team doesn't matter, and if you think about it,
But
team.
no, but
Oh, I would be pissed. Like back in the day, if Idra picked me for some system like that, he's like, "Yeah, I'm really good against the control in practice." I'd be like, "Fuck you!" Like,
What the fuck, dog? I thought we were on the same fucking team, mate.
team would
So-
be upset too. They want more chances for their players to progress further in a tournament.
right. So like what you just said is true. Teams don't matter. What Steven is saying is that teams should matter. People
Well,
should.
I'm not even saying they should, but I mean, if they did, that would be
Well,
really cool. It would be
so-
really nice. if they
Actually,
did.
that's a different subject. Like Archon mode won't actually do anything for that. Like,
Right.
And the idea that a team would pay anyone for Archon mode is ludicrous. They would just be like, "No, we'll take our 2 top players and they'll figure it out," because we're in like penny saving StarCraft land. Like this is not like I'm sure there's like weird things going on in Dota land where they have a guy that literally just fluffs the balls of 2 of the players because they want that. And they pay that guy to do that because that's the kind of money that's over there right now. But in StarCraft, if you're making money to play StarCraft, you've already made it. The idea that a team would be like, wait a second. You want a guy that's going to play like the secondary game to StarCraft, and we're going to pay him and fly him around? Like, yeah, okay. Like, we've got some ramen back in the kitchen. Is that acceptable pay? Then yeah, they'll.
I get what you guys are saying. You and Jeff and Kevin, I get what you're saying about the idea behind it. But if you think about just the team in the relationship to StarCraft, it's the team that you play for that team. You get that team exposure. You play for them, but it's not the same as like CS:GO, it's 5 guys really tight knit working together to do one thing. Where if you leave, like Jeff, right, you leave Evil Geniuses, your fans, unless they're kind of attached to the EG brand, they're gonna follow you. Yeah. Jeff leaves with you. You quit, EG doesn't lose a legacy. Jeff's legacy ends right there.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that in the early days of StarCraft 2, and this is something that was really critical about Korean teams, because Koreans were fucking horrible at this. But the foreign scene actually did do a good job of making teams feel like teams. I thought that as much as I shut on them, EG did it better than anyone else, and Team Liquid was a very close second, or maybe better. I don't know. Both of those teams, both EG and Team Liquid, were really good. EG had like all their cute little videos of everybody in the house or whatever, which was like really adorable to see everybody interact with each other. You guys had like the lift-off video that Anna filmed. Like all of that was like really cute. And the Team Liquid guys, like the Chef and the TLOs, like always have like the blogs and shit and the reach out and whatnot. It felt like they jive together really well. I feel like to some extent that there was like good involvement in like making teams feel like teams early on. But I mean that's kind of. I feel like EG and TL were really the only teams that really did that. I can't think of any other team that tried like really hard to do it. But like even without having to play together in a team game, I still think it's possible to have like that sense of teamliness, I guess.
Teamliness, I like that.
Yeah, teamliness.
But I get what you're saying. So I kind of felt bad for the kid though. He got shit on. He was looking at it like, hey, who am I gonna? This is a guy I know I can beat, and. He's thinking about his future in WCS. I don't know.
But it's a funny situation because you're absolutely right. It's not like there's drama after that. Like everyone's like, yeah, okay, yeah, he thought he was the best chance, and even Daishi, I think publicly at least, was just kind of like, oh fuck, I'm fucked, I would have been like, fuck you, like I would be pissed, but it's fine. It is a 1v1 game, and teammates play teammates all the time. Yep. And it's never like a bitter thing. It's just a fact of reality. We know it could happen. That was a weird one because they picked their opponents, and it's not 4G was forced to pick him. So in that sense, I would understand if there was drama. Like I got that, but they were cool with it, and they have different cutthroat terminology.
Oh yeah, they were fine. It was some little community stirrings about it. This next question, Jeff, is I know that you might not be able to fully comment on it, because it's going to ask a little bit about, just EG business plan kind of thing.
Is it the Legacy Void one?
Yeah, it's asking, if you guys are looking to pick up more people.
Yeah. I have nothing to do with that, so that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is, from what I understand, that was definitely something that was mentioned as a plan. There's been all kinds of guys that have gone through free agency where I've been like, hey, this guy would be a great addition to the team. I really feel like they can represent us strongly and stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, in Heart of the Storm and right now, EG will not spend any money on new players. And then as we go to Legacy of the Void, it's kind of like a we will see kind of thing, where if it is big and there's a huge splash and it's doing well and stuff like that, yeah, they'll sign some players. But none of that's set in stone, and none of that's, like I said, that's just what I gather. So who knows?
Let's see. Get through the rest of these. What do you think the future holds for StarCraft after the release of Legacy of the Void? Is it a year, 2 years, 5 years? And is StarCraft 3 something we expect somewhere down the line?
StarCraft we haven't got no StarCraft 4 yet.
Don't know. This is...
I think what I want to say to that is just that from what we gathered from Blizzard recently is I really do feel that there's going to be a very long... continuation of competitive StarCraft.
Yeah.
So
I think StarCraft 2 has a long legacy ahead of it.
Get it?
Yep. Before StarCraft 3 is anywhere close to being a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Red 13, we talked about Protos design, so I'm going to skip over you, buddy. All right, this guy has one for everyone. Destiny, after the first couple days, weeks of the beta, you said, all right, he's already talked about, okay, you have been playing a lot of Hearthstone lately. Do you plan to go towards Legacy of the Void a little harder in the near future?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just kind of riding out this Hearthstone train right now, getting used to the game, and then maybe we'll play more in the future. We'll see.
Okay. How's your, obviously without going into numbers and all that, have you noticed a dip in ad revenue with playing Hearthstone? Because I hear that a lot of people that watch Hearthstone are habitual ad block users.
I mean, I make like $300 to $400 a month max off of ad revenue anyway, so.
But now that you say that, it has been $289. So.
Yeah, I don't think who said that? People ad block more often, and
yeah, that the big time streamers that stream for for Hearthstone that they don't make as much despite having those insane numbers because...
Did these guys even stream 3 or 4 years ago when the ad revenue was insane?
I don't know. Was that one guy who streams Hearthstone that used to play StarCraft?
Oh, Trump or Masan?
Yeah, I think so.
Both of those guys, not to shit on them or anything because they're doing really good on Hearthstone, but both of those guys were relatively small in the StarCraft 2 scene, so
Okay.
I don't know, like, if they're comparison. I don't know, do people ad block more in Hearthstone? I would be surprised. I mean, I guess you could do polling, but I'd be surprised if Hearthstone people ad block more than the average person. I think anybody that watches Twitch in any part of it is going to be pretty high, except for maybe the console streams, because those are more accessible to people that maybe don't spend as much time on the computer.
The only thing I can think is that maybe more people watch Hearthstone through mobile, maybe. And then I think through mobile they don't get commercials as much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But ad revenue, especially in the days now of like Twitch alerts and Stream Tip and all that shit, like ad revenue has always been a very small, minor part of income now. It's more having to do with donations and subscriptions and whatnot, so.
Okay. In Control, you have a really cool hobby with Warhammer, which does have its own tournament scene. Is there a way to monetize that for you, or will it always strictly be a hobby?
So, I mean, I'm not in it to... I'm not, I have no end game plan. Like, it's really fucking fun for me. I call it my golf because it is my hobby, but I've just spent obscene amounts of money on it, and it's also my form of competition, so I really enjoy it. But I'm helping like couple of the big companies inside that are like running competitions and leagues and tournaments start to stream and start to make content and kind of bringing them out of the darkness into the Twitchiverse and that kind of stuff. So. Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility that could happen some point, but like if it never does, I didn't fail. I didn't set out to do that. I'm just, if people want to do it, I'm trying to help them. So maybe someday.
Okay.
Is that like is that a mind-blowing thing to you? That when did you start Warhammer? When you were like in your teens or?
12.
Yeah. The idea that you, I'm sorry, I just recently had an experience with this. This blows my mind. Like, you have something that you really like, and now you've grown up to the point where, like, you have, like, a larger online presence than that thing, and now you have the ability to help them. Does that, like, totally fuck your mind? Is it in, like, a really good way, or?
I like it. I'm a little bit, I'm kind of used to it, because I kind of experienced it with even StarCraft in the Western world. Like, it was always big in Korea, obviously, but I've been around when like literally your mom, dad, and 3 people were watching you at a WCG event, and that was the audience. And now I've seen stadiums filled up, and I've seen large audiences. So it's always been surreal for me, but I'm a little bit more used to it, I guess.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. QXC, you said you were taking a break from StarCraft 2, but recently you qualified and played in Challenger, and then you qualified for the Red Bull Archon tournament. What brought you back so quickly, and how did you manage to stay up to snuff?
Money, and NA is bad.
Okay.
That's basically it. Like, there's just not a lot of good people in NA. It's pretty easy. Your skill doesn't decay that quickly, and people don't get better. Is kind of the two things. Like, I was good enough to qualify for Challenger when I was still playing. The people who were still around like didn't get that much better. I came back. I kind of remembered things I was doing. Qualified for Challenger. I didn't really get any better, though, because I lost to Violet again in almost the same way. And the whole reason I came back was for money.
Violet's a pretty good player, and he's always underrated, I feel. If that makes you feel any better.
Whatever. He underperforms at times, especially lately. Like losing to foreigners in WCS. But not this one. And so now I got the Red Bull thing, and me and Beastie are practicing Legacy all the time, just getting ready for that.
Oh, awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. I watch you guys all the time when we used to do the Archon move for Lycan League, and that was a lot of fun. In Control. So did you see the question about High Templar and Disruptors?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically for people who don't see the question, the guy's just comparing the cost and the effects of the High Templar and the Disruptor, and he's asking Jeff where he would want to see one or the other on the battlefield.
No, you're most likely and most often going to want Templar, especially in the PvT matchup. The Disruptor, I don't think, is to be looked at as like a apple-to-apple cost analysis between different units. It's fantastic in harass rolls, and if they're lacking a couple of techs, they can really catch their army off guard and do a lot of damage real quick. The cooldown on it's fairly short, so if they don't have an answer for it, it's going to have an immediate effect pretty quick. And at only 200 gas, it's not nearly as much of a fucking gut-wrenching investment as it used to be, where it was like, oh god, if this doesn't work out, I've actually sunk a decent chunk of my economy into that. So yeah, they're very, very different. But the Templar is a staple. It is your AOE right now. The Disruptor is not. The Disruptor is like your surprise AOE.
Okay. Let's see. We are trucking along. Okay, Lycan, what was your experience casting WCS with Nathanius? What was it like, and how did I get the gig, and what did I do to prepare? Okay, so first of all, Nathanius is very chill, very calm, and he was just easy to work with. I've worked with him on the show, so I knew going into it that he's just a very relaxed guy, and I felt no pressure. I was kind of first day one missing his cues. He was trying to throw some hype situations to me, and I wasn't getting them. So that night I watched the replays, caught where I was making those mistakes, and I think I corrected a lot of them the next day. As far as how did I get the gig, it was literally just networking. I told the right people that I was interested. Full disclosure, I had been saying that I wanted to do hosting, not casting, but when they came to me and said, hey, we're going to put you, do you want to cast? I wasn't going to turn it down. And so to prepare, I took every person I knew. I looked at the matchups. I went to a bunch of pros and amateurs, and I said, hey, give me as much information about these matchups because I don't play Protos, I don't play Zerg. Help me out with them, especially. And then I just studied it for about a week beforehand. And then after day one, I watched what I did, looked at my mistakes, and I think day two I improved a lot. So got the gig through networking, and then I prepared through just querying people for information and studying. Let's see. The state of Protoss has been one of the most widely discussed subjects in the past few months. Based on what you guys have seen and heard, how happy do you think the community will be with the state of Protoss when Legacy releases? I think that's a question that I don't think can really be answered right now. I mean, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of time to go. People are still, the development team is still making a lot of changes. But if any of you guys think there's an answer to that, you're free to chime in.
I mean,
Nope.
just look at the curve. Things are going well. Things will probably continue to go well. Expect to see something cool come out soon.
Cool. Next question. In control, is the Protoss micro requirement now on par with the races with the introduction of the Disruptor?
I don't even know how to assess that question. Like,
Do you think you have to micro now?
That's
like the weird anti-Protoss bias is so funny. It's like people have this like idea that Protoss is this giant A move race. It certainly was closer to being true with the Colossus, but Jesus Christ, it's so not. It's just like so off base. It's weird. No, they're hyper micro-oriented. If you Protoss win and lose off their force fields, and that's like evident of MC, who's actually like this. He had some of the best force fields, so he like won all the tournaments. That was pretty much it. And he had balls. He was fucking crazy. Yeah, I mean, the Disruptor adds a whole new element, but it's been there since the beginning of Legacy of the Void. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
The Colossus is absolute shit, so our ability to just A move is a lot less.
Have you played with the new Disruptor since the patch or the nerf,
Yes.
Jeff?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think as it is right now, I don't think it stands. It's way too weak. It's like actually sad. Like it comes into an army and it kills like 3 roaches maybe, even if they're all grouped. Like it's really fucking bad, I think.
Depends on what you want it to do. Yeah, I mean it's not really for main fights because of what you just said. Absolutely, I agree with that. But it still fucking wrecks some face if they're not ready for it. But I felt like that's how it always was.
Yeah, sure.
It wrecks less face now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm reading one of the questions just to make sure I communicate it properly.
Uh-oh.
Okay, with Protoss players relying on so many key units to stay alive or make attacks work, do you think it's possible for Protoss players to play a very aggressive playstyle in Legacy of the Void that doesn't require them to be all in?
What? He's asking if Protoss can play an aggressive playstyle?
That isn't all in.
Yo, you gotta look these questions over next time, man. Hey, let's be done. Let's. If you're at this point, you're this low in the thread asking these questions, I think we're good.
Yeah, that actually was the end of the thread. Let me give these new ones a scan real quick. I won't ask any. Just let me. Hold on.
What in the
But
fuck?
that was the
I think
bottom.
there's like 7 or 8 new ones. Actually, there's really good ones to check that just popped up.
That's why I want to see. Let me make sure there are no good ones
For
before we. But we were done. It was a good assessment, Jeff. We were at the end of the thread.
I could sense it in the question. Like, hey, is it possible for Protoss to attack in Legacy of the Void without all ending? It's like, what in the fuck?
Well, I think, to be fair, without, like, drawing on, I think the guy's question had more to do with, like, the problem is it seems really hard for Protoss to put on pressure sometimes without it being an all-in, whereas, like, Terran have openers, you know, like Reaper, or it used to be Hellions, you know, many years ago, where they would have openers that were pressure but weren't all-in, or Zerg kind of has openers that are pressure but aren't all-in, but, like, Protoss...
Steven, I know you've been out of the game for a while, but, like, people have been going Blink Stalker openings for, like, literally a year now, and that is about as both defensive and offensive as you could possibly get, and it's not all-in.
I mean, before the map nerfs, those were pretty much all-ins, like, every time.
No, they were. There are Blink Stalker all-in, Steven, but opening Blink is not an all-in, and it's a really aggressive, good opening.
Yeah,
in PvT, the standard, one of the standard builds is, like, Twilight, +2 gates, Robo. You get out on the map with, like, 6-8 Stalkers and Observer, you blink, you defend, it's exactly what you're talking about. Then you
transition to attack.
Yeah.
Alright, so we have a few...
No.
Hold on.
No, nope. We're good.
All right,
it's 3 o'clock. I told you I'm...
Yeah,
seriously, you're done.
Switch over. This asking question about switching over. Yes, if you are playing Heart of the Swarm, don't stop. If you have access, check access, by the way. Check your email. Go into your thing where you switch the servers. Change over to Legacy of the Void. You should be playing it. And I don't think there are any other questions that are worth delaying Jeff's lunch. So we're going to say our goodbyes. QXC, thank you for coming on. You're a final guest, so you want to go ahead and tell people where they can find you and what's going on in your world.
Just check me out at the Red Bull Qualifier. Follow me on Twitter at @Cole_QXC. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you. Steven, glad to have you back. It's been a while. What's going on with you?
Just playing Hearthstone, you know. Pretty much. What, any other questions about me, or?
What kind of underwear do you wear?
What?
I said, what
sorry. I prefer boxer briefs. Do you want to have this discussion right now? Like boxer.
Did you finish Witcher 3?
Not yet. I got to Skellige. Why, did you play a game?
No, I'm gonna play it in like winter. I think it'll be fun.
Okay, you'll like it. Yeah, I got the Skellige. I haven't played it since, but I'll pick it back up and finish it for sure.
All right, cool. Jeff, what's going on in your world?
I'm going to be casting Gfinity not this weekend, but the one after, so check it out.
Nice.
Same time as everything else that's happening, but it'll be fun. Casting alongside Huck and Stefano, so we'll see if we can all lose our jobs. Should be fun. Richard Lewis is hosting. I mean,
Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. There'll be words. So, yeah, that's it. I'm going to stream later today. I'm going to have lunch, then stream. Check us all out. Follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please, and thank you. This is me for the late game. VODs will be up on the YouTube channel. You can check it out. It's the same every week, 4 o'clock Eastern, 10 CEST, so hit that follow button if you want to. And, do you have that Warhammer thing that, like, is it nearby that you could pick it up and show us? Or
no, guy's putting it together right now, but okay. I will have it.
Can you tell us what your top 5 favorite Warhammer things are, Jeff?
So what he's referring to, Steven, is a Warlord Titan, which is 22.5 inches tall. It's this big, if not bigger, probably like this big. And it's 50 pounds. It's going to be fucking amazing. It costs $2,000.
50 pounds? Holy shit.
What is that in USD?
Oh my god, if it's 50 pounds, it'd be amazing. But then everyone would have one, and it wouldn't be amazing. Yeah, and then, I don't know. I think you're trolling, but I'm just having a good time.
All right, Steven, are any of you guys streaming right after the show?
Yeah, I will be. Some Hearthstone. I love Hearthstone.
All right, well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for coming. As always, great to have my co-host here, and QXC. You all have a good night. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Later.
See you guys. Bye, everybody.